We're ready to go? Okay. I would like to call this meeting to order, right? Okay, so roll call. I'm used to more happening at the beginning, that's why I was, what's happening?
Sarah Glanville.
Here.
Dennis Scholl.
Here.
Eddie Embley.
Here.
Ed Stafford.
Here.
Russ Walker.
Here.
Richard Newville.
Here.
Stephen Rhodes, absent this evening. Robert Lickauer. Absent. Sherry Richmond.
Here.
And Rebecca Rachel.
Here.
Is Robert still with?
Yes, Carol.
Carol,
I
yeah.
apologize.
I'm present. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I need to make a note here.
Robert, Karen, I'm
All right, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Okay, tonight we have our continuation of the public hearing for the rezoning request for 2221 Guilford College Road, 5300 Mackey Road, 2207 Guilford College Road, and 5303 Mackey Road. So I assume we all know what's going on. Are you Jason?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to call you forward in just a minute, but I want to actually read something first because I wanted it on the record, Katie, and I can give it to you afterwards if you want, but I felt it necessary to say, so I wanted to bring it forward tonight and I wrote it down so I won't forget anything. All right, so this is our third meeting in discussion of this particular development, and in that time, we have seen the passion and love that the residents of Jamestown have for this town. Many have reached out to us as a group or on an individual level and voiced concerns, suggestions, and a willingness to be active participants in the discussion. I believe everyone who has spoken up has done so with the best of intentions and the desire to be helpful. The conversations have been overall fruitful. Unfortunately, however, some have been unproductive and distract from the task at hand. I do not want us as a board to get lost in the noise and be derailed from our mission, which is to recommend to the town council a plan that has been thoroughly vetted and thoughtfully considered. I do not want any board members to feel it necessary to participate in any interactions that you believe are detrimental to that mission. I firmly believe that active citizen participation is the key to a healthy community, and I do not want to do anything that will be construed as hampering that. However, when unfounded allegations and personal attacks are laid upon members of the board, I will not allow those to pass. I have known many of you for a long time, and I know you to be people of integrity and conviction. Some of you I am just now getting to know, but have no reason to believe that you do not come to the planning board with the same vigor and dedication the rest of us have always had in approaching our duties. I welcome anyone to take us to task whenever there may be a lapse in judgment or procedure. I will, however, defend on the record every person on this board when it comes to malicious slander. I thank every member of this board for the hard work you put into this and all projects. Your service has not gone unnoticed. I appreciate all of you. You're welcome. So I wanted that on the record, Katie. So, and then we can move forward. All right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Jason Epley from Benchmark, yes? And Jason is going to facilitate for us our discussion this evening, which my understanding, and Jason, please correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to, I guess using this outline here, facilitate us through a discussion so we could, in the last couple of meetings, we've been able to have a high-level discussion of kind of our high-level vision for this plan. And I think Jason's going to help us kind of try to drill down into some of the details and do so in a methodical way. Correct?
I'm going to do my best.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Jason Epley and Matthew, did you want to say anything before I get started? All right, I'm going to roll. I have a different copy, so hopefully I hope you can read that. We had intended to do a PowerPoint. That's why the contrast is the way it is, but we weren't able to get the projector set up quite like we wanted it. So, and can everyone hear me speaking through this mask okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'll continue to do it until I run out of breath. So tonight, the purpose of going through this is to establish a framework that you all can hopefully be able to make a recommendation. And to do that, we're going to go through the key elements of site plan review for something like this, and look at this and go through these issues. And then at the end, go back through and, look at what's most important. So tonight, the framework, as I mentioned, is to what are the most important elements. We'll make a list of those, what's that high level list. Then as you begin to make the decision, you'll discuss, what needs to change and how, and that may not come tonight. That may be at the next meeting, the how, So tonight is really the what. Let's make the list. What are the major issues? And then, eventually this board, you're obviously going to make a recommendation to town council. So the key elements that I wanted to go over tonight are listed on the first slide that you have there, and it's about 13 items. Those include residential form, composition, and that means the amount, that kind of thing, residential architecture, transportation, bike and pedestrian elements, parks, public space, open space, commercial, community impacts, landscaping, project phasing, and then there may be other topics that we don't cover on this list that you all may want to add to it. So we'll get started, and feel free to ask questions as we go through it. The residential elements that I wanted to go over that I think are important for you all to consider, we'll start with development form, and that would include lot sizes, setbacks, location, front versus rear loaded garages, detached garages, and that would be for single family or the townhomes. So that's development form. Those are the things that you really want to look at in the development plan. The composition would include what is the mixture, what's the right mixture for single family versus townhomes, single family type, proportions, and then density. That's your composition. And architecture, things like the character, the porches, materials, garages, again, height, foundation, and then the variety of the styles that you see in development. So those are that's kind of the box, if you will, of things that you look at in development review related to this particular rezoning proposal. Transportation elements, and you can stop me if you want to, if anybody has a specific question. Transportation elements that are really kind of foundational would be access points. How do you enter the site, where, how many, traffic control, signalization, stop signs, those sort of things. Internal connections, how are things connected within the property and the proposed development. Trip generation, what's the traffic going to be? Street types and width, so that would include, how wide are the traffic lanes, that sort of thing. Okay, next one is bike and pedestrian elements. And I know you all are on planning boards and you see this kind of thing all the time. So, bear with me if you feel like, oh, I know this, Greenway trails, that would include ownership. Where should those be located? How, if there's any outside of the property, how do they tie into the property? Side paths, and side paths are typically, they're similar to greenways and sidewalks, but they're more for a mixed, things like walking and biking. It's a separate path. It's not a sidewalk and it's not a greenway, but it's usually to the side of the road, separated, obviously. External connections and internal connections, talked a little bit about that. How do these trails and pathways connect inside the development, but also how do they connect to adjacent properties as well and other trails. Park elements, so parks and recreation type elements, where's the location, the type, the function, how will they be programmed, public versus private, and then, where is it located? Where are the main amenities located on the proposal? So these are all things that, as we're thinking through this particular proposal, these are things to be thinking about. Okay. Public space elements. Those are very similar to the parks, but a little different. Looking at location, type, function, and programming, that could include something like a small amphitheater, for example, or it could be a courtyard that's a public courtyard that's adjacent to some of the proposed development. Open space elements, those would include conservation lands that need to be protected, trees, maybe there's a need for that on the site, and then how much open space, and then connectivity, which is very important to open space as well. All right, commercial elements, very similar to some of the items from the residential. We're looking at things, location, the amount, form, what does it look like, What type of uses are we talking about for the commercial? Landscape elements would include things like street trees, buffers, external streetscapes. So not only what's internal to the property, but how does it address the street front on the exterior of the property and the potential development. Signage, although it's not landscaping, it kind of comes under that vein. And then there may be some other things that, public art or some other type features you might think would come under that particular element. Okay. Then we have community impacts. And that is something I know there's been a lot of discussion about schools, law enforcement, fire, solid waste, street maintenance. What additional information is needed on these impacts. Be thinking about that. I'm sure you have. Other elements, project phasing. How will the project be phased over time? What are the predicted absorption rates? When will it be built out? Historic preservation. There's been some discussion that we've heard and followed concerning historic preservation. External properties across Guilford College Road. There's some that's included within some of the calculations for the site development. That's something that should also be considered. Need for town facilities or other public facilities. And then other questions that you may have, about the proposed rezoning that you feel will be important for discussion. So tonight, I feel like the purpose is to identify, what are the most important elements. There's that list I just gave you that, for further discussion. Doesn't mean they're all important. Don't misunderstand me. They're all important. But are there some elements on that list that you feel like are going to need more discussion than others? Is there additional information that's needed? So I guess that's kind of the launching off point into our discussion. If I need to take notes and write things down, I can. But we really want to kind of drill into this list. Are there things to the board that you feel like are really high priority, but high level? These are things that we really need to spend some time talking about. And then some of these other items may not be as important. They're all important, as I said. But so, turn it back over to you.
Oh, no. I was like, I don't have to talk as much today. So I was excited about this.
So I guess, so now would be the opportunity for, I don't know who wants to go first, but to kind of express what you think, what you see as some of those high level things we ought to address that really need further discussion.
I'll jump in.
Okay.
This is Kara Arena. And I might combine a couple of your key elements.
Sure.
Specifically, I think one of the things we want to talk about is the location for the various elements within the development.
Okay.
So the commercial elements, the different types of residential forms, public space, community amenities, farmers market, all of the little bits and pieces of the development plan. I think the location for those might be a good place to start.
Okay, so you're specifically, I can turn the microphone here. If I need to do something different, Matthew, please do it. So you're talking about, this is definitely a major topic that needs to come out for discussion at a future workshop, is location, and that's related to all the different uses that are proposed.
Yes.
The whole entire site plan, I guess is what you were saying.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Anybody else?
But I don't think we're saying at a future workshop. I think we're saying right now.
Yeah, we can start now too,
Yeah.
sure. That's fine, yeah.
All right, well, let's dive into that. What's,
Did anyone else want to start with something else?
Yeah, you want to get you want to get everything that
Sure, let's get
people
some more.
consider
So
important. Then we,
location.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, if you're asking for our top of the list, mine would be buffering.
Buffer.
Buffering.
Okay.
In
And
other words, what's the impact on the neighboring properties?
right,
Less than that.
so external. is what you're
Yeah, I'm thinking along the edge of the,
All right.
and all the edges, because there's multiple pieces of this. I'm Dennis Shaw, by the way, sorry. There's multiple pieces of this, and there's small little pieces everywhere, all the buffer,
Okay,
not just the stuff along the two major roads.
gotcha. All right,
Let's go around the circle then. Russ, do you have anything?
I
Priority.
agree with comments that you folks had made about looking at the plan. I didn't realize, my ignorance shows, that there was a pipeline crossing this property.
I didn't realize that either.
Safety
Okay,
concerns.
safety, all right.
The buried gas lines you're
Yeah.
talking about.
In there, they mentioned a
Pipeline.
pipeline.
Yeah,
Is a colonial pipeline to come through here too?
towards the back.
Yeah, well, that's still
But it's
there.
there, yeah.
All right,
I think everyone knows my number one issue is community impact,
okay,
in particular the schools, but other impact as well.
yeah,
Oh, this is Sarah Glamel, by the way, who just said that.
all right.
I have many concerns, but I think one of my main concerns would be density
Okay.
in the types of materials being used.
And we'll just say, building materials, okay?
Pardon?
Building materials?
Yes.
Okay, okay. All right,
I'm Ed Stafford, and, you know, I want this to be really a premier development. So I'm concerned about the architectural appearances of the different buildings and groups of buildings, that they be interesting, that they have character to them, and that it not look like
Cookie cutter.
cookie cutter or a big spec building thing. I want it to be interesting and be a real addition to the character of Jakestown.
all right, keep going.
I'm Richard Newbill, and I had several people come to me with concerns about the price point of the 1,400 square foot townhomes,
Okay,
and how many of those will be on it, are they all over 1,400 square feet? Or, you know, address that.
the price point. The townhomes, right?
Yes.
Okay. We'll put TH for now.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Sherry Richmond. I think location is my major concern. Where can certain things be moved? In other words, not have commercial next to established single-family housing, but just to look at the overall plan, where can we flip things?
Okay.
And then moving down, I would look at density and then buffering, and then the rest of the stuff I think we can get into pretty well.
Okay.
But for a big chunk, I think looking at the big picture, what can we move around would be my preference.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with Sherry, and this is Rebecca Mann-Rayborn. You know, where things can be moved, especially the retail and amenities, hopefully more within the development.
Okay.
The residential elements, pretty much all of them, going from quality to lot size, which would affect density and everything like that. And I guess the only thing that hasn't been said that I wanted to mention was specifically the age-targeted housing. Wanting to really dive into trying to move that up to an earlier phase and, you know, maybe a different location that's closer to the Cedarwood area. So I guess just generally age-targeted and just, you know, ensuring that this is an age-friendly community.
Okay.
Remind me, someone, the age-targeted housing is it just to attract people of a certain age? It's not, or is it, remember when we had to consider, probably Eddie, you were here then. Remember when we had to consider the senior housing, that was like, it was federal grant, and you had to be of a certain age to live there. you remember what we're talking about for this? Is it like,
I know what you're talking about. I mean, my understanding was more that it was,
Just
at
appealing.
baseline age in place type places. So, you know, single story, you built so that people could live out their lives there, but
Right,
not,
okay, so just make-
not like a nursing facility. or
right,
anything.
but it's attractive to a certain age.
Right, and I mean, that would be the question
Right, okay.
for people behind the plans.
Yeah, well, it's
as far
not,
as this other
it's not that you have to be a certain age to live there. It just is attractive to a certain age. Is what, we don't know that yet, I guess.
Well, that's a big list. It's not as big as I thought it might be.
Jason, can I add one more? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Just the like community, or not the community, I'm sorry. The commercial elements and what makes up the commercial space.
Okay,
So restaurants versus and small shops versus
okay.
what we don't want, like hemp stores, maybe CBD stores.
You don't want to target it there?
You know, I love Target, but I'm perfectly happy driving 15 minutes down the road to go to
Me
Target.
too, me
Yes.
too.
So, Jason, do you want, I think we all gave like our top discussion point.
Right.
Did you want all of our discussion points now?
Well,
just
I
the
mean,
top?
well, it depends
Because you
on
said you
what-
thought the list would be bigger.
depends on what
The
we
list
wanna
would definitely be
do.
bigger.
Do we want to try to work up through all these tonight? If we do, maybe we'll go ahead and start working on this list.
You're gonna pick off probably the top 2 or 3 of those after we agree which 2 are the top or 3, 2 or 3.
Yeah, so,
And those are the ones you're gonna work on. The rest, they become less critical as we go down the list. If we, I assume the next thing you were gonna do is prioritize.
We can do that.
Well, and I do just, I want to butt in as the council liaison. Again, do not feel like we need to rush anything.
No.
This is, and I
don't feel rushed at all.
appreciate Benchmark being here and staff arranging that. There is no, don't let this be some sort of time limit on, we have to do this tonight, or we have to do this month, or anything. You know, it needs, the questions need to be asked and need to be asked, so.
Well, I think, let's just look at this list that we have real quickly. Start with location. Yeah, that's going to require, looking at the development site, talking about where uses are located, proposed, where could they be? That can end up, being a pretty long discussion in and of itself. That's probably your primary goal. One of the primary goals of looking at this, site review is just that topic there. That could take quite a bit of time to work through that. And I'm not sure we all have the materials to do that tonight. Maybe we can go through that. But to me, that would be a priority in my mind for sure, just because that's one of the basic things we need to look at. Are there any others that stand out? I mean, community impacts is pretty, a lot of involved with that. Buffering, I think, would be a pretty short discussion on that, I think. I think we could probably go through that one pretty quickly.
I don't know, Don, if you live,
Maybe not.
I don't think that one's a short conversation. If you're one of the people that lives, I don't. But if you're one of the people that lives next to this,
Right.
I don't think that's a short discussion, in my opinion.
Sure, and it may not be, but there's certain ways to handle buffering. There's certain
Well, that's what I want to
requirements. What I'm saying is there's certain ways that buffering can be approached in a development. There's only a certain amount of ways that you can buffer a development and impacts like that. Density, pretty long discussion there. I imagine that's a pretty long discussion. Building materials. I mean, each of these you can see, will involve quite a bit of time thinking about and going through that. And I'm not sure, we have all the materials to do that tonight. Speaking of materials, we can certainly dive into that as we can. But looking at this list, what are your top 3? You want to go around, everybody tell their top 3? Do it that way?
What does everyone want to start on? We have 2 people who want location for sure. I'm fine starting there.
That's fine, I'm
People
fine
want
with
to start-
The
start
question,
on.
the comment that I have about location is that some of the rest of these can go in, once you figure out, are the single families going to be here? And then you work on buffer, and it may
Right. Yeah,
depend
some
on
of the pieces might
location.
fall.
Right.
For age targeted, that goes in location. Building materials and architectural styles, that can come a little bit later, but I think location, where are you going to put this? Where is the best place to put this? And then you can work down to some of the others. And community impact also would go with density and location.
Sure. Sure.
You know, how's something here going to affect Jamestown proper? That's just my thought.
And I think we have all the materials we're going to get, right, to have these discussions. So I
All
think,
right.
yeah, Russ, go ahead.
Well, Russ Walker, community impact is a big topic.
Right.
I don't know how many acres are in the current town limits of Jamestown compared to how many acres are in this project. And I have begun to think, you know, I have not heard, I live directly across from this on Mackey Road.
Gotcha.
The people I hear are people who live there in my community. I haven't heard anybody come up and say, this is a great idea. I can't wait for it to happen. And it made me think, yeah, what can the community, how big a development can this community swallow without being swallowed up by it, you know? This is a big project
It is. Right.
for a little town.
Matthew, what's the current acreage of Jamestown?
I'd have to look it up, I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't know.
Sorry. I'm in there to do it,
And what's our current population?
about 4,300.
4,300. And do we have a projection of what this community would add?
It's too early to even guess.
Okay. Well, did we get those other projections I asked for too? The school projections? And,
We did,
Oh, okay.
we did it this afternoon, and Katie will send it out to you in an email, yes.
okay, so okay. I mean, I guess it just concerns me a little bit that we can say it's too early to project how many people. I mean, clearly the developer has an idea of how many homes they want and what the average capacity of those homes is. So you'd think we'd have some projection of what the population at this town would be. So, I mean, I would like to get that at some point for sure. And I personally don't think it's too early to get that, but.
Well, and again, if you feel like there's not enough information to have these discussions, we can wait, you know, I see no reason to, you know, force something through when we get information the day it happens.
Okay.
If we explore the location and then we find out how many people, then we would look at that particular section of townhomes or that particular section of single family and how are we going to suggest reducing the density then? And that would help a lot with the schools and the density. And we're talking about doubling Jamestown, trying to deal with that. So I think if we can manage it, well, that's the best thing we can do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sherry
So
Richmond, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting my name.
Is everyone okay then if we start with location and kind of how the community's, this development's laid out? And then we can kind of work from there. I think Sherry and others are right that some of it will fold into the discussion. Some of the other topics will fold into the discussion.
All right. So I guess I should try to sketch out the roads real quickly here, huh? Or can you guys just talk and I'll just take notes? You all have a copy of the site
We
plan,
do.
right?
We do have a copy of the site plan.
All right, well, who would like to take the lead and let's talk about location of uses. And you obviously have some uses that are oriented towards the street frontage, some that are further into the development. Does anybody have something burning they'd like to start with?
Well, just so we're all literally on the same page, is there one of these maps that you all find best kind of reference as we're talking about location? The one on number 9 here seems to lay out kind of where proposed things are right now. But maybe there's a better one that I'm not seeing. I mean, not that we can't look at any others, but just so we're all kind of looking at the same layout.
9 or 12.
12?
12's pretty good too.
Okay.
It has a little bit more detail with like the age targeted amenities and community parks.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, and we can flip back and forth.
9 and 12. Okay.
All All right, uses, location. Who would like to start?
I'm Eddie Oakley. I'll start out with probably the number 2 complaint or concern. I won't call it a complaint, a concern is on the corner of Mackey and Guilford College Road, putting the ballpark in the very first thing you see at that location is a ballpark. The people that live in proximity to that location has contacted me about why would you put a ballpark in the main corner of a project? So that's a good place to start, maybe.
All right. What are your comments and thoughts about the ballpark?
I agree, because you're right across Sherry Richmond. I agree. You're right across from established single-family housing, and no need to put something in that's going to be noisy. In its own right, it should be noisy because the kids should be having fun. But that is not the place where some people might be resting, wanting to sleep early at night or whatever. They have a right to do what they want to do with their time and should not have lights on and other things. And those lights would be on quite a bit if you're going to have ball fields. And my suggestion is we look at something to flip with that if we're going to have ball fields, which is a question really for the Jamestown, is who would keep it up, and is it really something that Jamestown wants? So we get into some more questions about a ballpark. Or are they going to put their money, Jamestown is going to redo the ball fields that are down there already by the golf course. So I guess that raises more questions. But for our overall location, I would move it, or move that concept of a park. It could be a different kind of park. It could be a walking park.
Or it could be age-related townhomes.
Age-related townhomes.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if we could, I mean, I know there's topographical, issues that we don't necessarily, we can't get from this map to know how easily things can flip location. But in terms of like a more appropriate, in terms of not being right next to residential, where the age targeted is now, at, like you said, up here in B,
Yeah,
would be, because that's where like sheets and stuff is up there,
Yeah.
right? So that's a more appropriate place to have, if it's going to be ball fields, I would
Either
think that'd be a more
commercial or
appropriate
ball
place
field.
for it.
Yes, Sherry Richmond, someone brought up to me that there's a railroad track there, and maybe some things that don't involve sleeping at night might be better
Yeah.
put down there by the
Oh, yeah, there
railroad
is a
track,
railroad track.
which would be
Yeah.
a park.
park or a ball
And
field.
flip, if they can, flip the age targeted up here, and it's easier for them to get in and out maybe, and it would blend in. And my goal is to make sure try to make sure things blend. It would blend in more with across the street and around the corner, some of the single family.
It'd be a smoother transition.
It would be a good transition.
Okay, so we're talking about flip, location, park with the age, restricted, what do you call it?
Age targeted.
Age targeted.
And I think if we're talking about that, we would want to look at A. So D is the potential ballparks, but A is also right in that area. But I think D and A would have to go together. A is the Olympic-sized pool, splash pad, basketball courts, large playground.
I don't know that it needs to go necessarily with the ballpark, but I do think because it's for this community, it should be more centrally located for.
I guess I
to
meant
be
just
able
away
to-
from there.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, away from that area,
Yeah.
yes. But we could talk about that, the
Well,
main
let's start,
development
let's
amenities.
make sure we got it.
That's
So just, do we have consensus on this idea of, number one, do you need a ballpark at all, at this site? And then two, assuming that answer is yes, are we flipping, you proposing flipping that? Or is that something you have a consensus on, everybody, or you just want to look at it?
Well, I
consider it,
know
or-
the Parks and Recreation, Rebecca, you could maybe speak to this better because they probably talk more to you, but I know the Parks and Recreation Committee has done some work on this, so I certainly wouldn't want to override discussions they've had.
This wouldn't override anything. We're sort of at the council level that their plan has come to the council and we are waiting on your
Okay.
ideas to come in.
But did
and
they have
things to
a
move along
firm belief that we needed these ball fields and to replace the other ball fields, or? I just don't want to, like, they've done all this work on this and came up with recommendations, and I don't want us to be like, well, let's not even listen to what they said. I'm just wondering if we should get someone from Parks and Recreation Committee next time to come and just.
That's not really, we had concerns at the council level that I
Okay.
think people on the committee who have spoken to me said they weren't as aware of, so.
Okay.
So now we're just trying to sort of sort that out.
Okay, we'll leave it.
I think we could still achieve some goals. With
Whatever
the
that is.
flipping,
Yeah.
and then later figure out if they're going to need that park or if it's something that can
Something
be.
else.
It could just be
Developed
a general,
differently.
Parks and Rec placeholder type
Right,
thing.
right.
That's-
Yeah.
But I think I heard that, definitely having the age targeted housing moved up to the front, you feel would be a better move. Is that accurate to say?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we can agree, you can agree, okay. All right, so whether or not the ballpark, baseball field stays or goes, that could be talked about at another time, I guess, or later on in the conversation, but we definitely like that, okay?
And I think that when we say the edge targeted should be up front, I think what the goal is, whether that's in D or where it's currently D or whatnot, but is so that the amenities are easily accessible for an older population, whether that's walking or whatnot. So it does, I don't know if anyone's saying it necessarily has to be where D is, if that's not where the other amenities are going to be that they'd be interested in, like the pickleball courts and that kind of thing, but.
Well, that, excuse me, but that area B, is that proposed to be a residential?
Yes.
Or is it amenities?
Oh, well, that says amenities, doesn't it?
Amenities, it's.
The area around it will be residential though.
Hmm.
The area around B will be the residential area for the
Yes,
age targeted
yeah.
housing.
Way up in that corner.
Yep. Yeah, this, page 12 shows like the recreation plans, that you can kind of assume that there will be housing around those recreational
Are you looking at
spaces.
if you look at page 9?
If you look at
Yeah.
9, it says it.
Yeah, S2,
Yeah.
single family, and here's where B would be those.
Okay, so I've heard
So
two,
S2,
so just to summarize where we're at, ballpark, question mark, we'll look at that a little closer. Upfront, age targeted housing, more or less where the ball fields are, sort of proposed. And then amenities, making sure those are centrally located. And I don't know that we can have that answer just yet because we've got a lot of more of the site to look at.
Well, so with the amenities, I mean, something I've also heard is not just that our concern is they wouldn't be centrally located for people living here, but, we don't necessarily want to drive by and just see a giant swimming pool or something.
Right,
So I think
right.
it's not, it's a buffer issue as well as,
Yes.
it seems like it would make more sense for development, but, we'd rather have it be residential to residential matching rather than residential to,
Yeah.
whether it be a ball field or pool or whatever.
Yes, you're saying,
Okay.
or a couple of you are saying that, Mr. Cherry Richmond, is to, I don't know what would be flipped because we're trying to make it sort of work with the plans here, but to put amenities that are for the residents here in a central location.
Okay.
That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, and I think the idea to think about here is, I think it's probably impossible for a group this large to draw out a plan. I think thinking about it, big picture, like you're thinking about, it's the right way to do it. Centrally located. Okay, well, that's being centrally located. We don't know exactly where on that site it might go. Is that, am I here? I see a lot of shaking heads. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
None of us are professional site planners.
no.
What's that?
None of us are professional site planners.
Understood.
We're talking concept.
Right, this is the big picture concept. So what other uses are big picture that you think should be somewhere different on the site or moved around?
Did everyone get a chance to look at the comments that Benchmark had made? Because I think they made some good comments. And here about some location stuff too, about, like there, I think were townhomes on a cul-de-sac, which doesn't make much sense, of like, it'd be curved, just, there's some stuff like that in here that I thought were good, that we might want to consider. And then this might just be my own personal Piccadilly, I don't know. But I have one thing that was brought up in here too is, I think somewhere in this proposal, it says it's to minimize cul-de-sacs. And then the benchmark comments point out there's an awful lot of cul-de-sacs for wanting to minimize cul-de-sacs. I might be the only one who is very environmentally minded. Cul-de-sacs are terrible for the environment because they force a lot more driving. So that's one concern I have, is just the layout with the cul-de-sacs in general. But of concern beyond that, on a more specific level, is I'm very concerned about these cul-de-sacs, and this goes to buffering some, Dennis, here, that butt up against Guilford College Road and Mackey Road. I've been more attuned since we've been starting to look at this plan to houses whose the back of the house faces the street, and just really realizing it's not a pleasant streetscape. And what I've noticed, I never know that I've lived here 12 years, and I just noticed it since we started talking about this on Guilford Road, there where, shoot, I can't remember what the development is, that's kind of across from Whittington Hall.
Woodbine.
That those homes in that community, they're back, and that's why this is why we have these huge fences along the streetscape, and that it just is, it's not inviting to see these huge fences like that. So I have concerns about the backs of homes being against the street.
But it's okay, it would be okay
With the proper buffer, it would be fine, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
if we're,
So those are I guess that it's related to location, I guess, just it's more layout than location, I guess, but just the number of cul-de-sacs and then if there's not adequate buffering for all these homes that would have their backs facing us.
And we're also working with AARP to be designated I keep wanting to say age-friendly community because that's what I've been thinking, but there's another term for it, but essentially that. And one of their big things is cul-de-sacs are not good. They don't encourage people to walk and all that kind of thing. So I'm just echoing both from what you're saying and also from, we have an older population in Jamestown, which is great. And, we want to make sure we're meeting needs and, kind of continuing that throughout the communities.
Yes. And full disclosure, I live on a cul-de-sac myself. So I apologize that I'm now saying that cul-de-sacs are a terrible thing. But there you go. That's what I'm saying. They're not a terrible thing. They're not a terrible thing.
It's also in the land development ordinance and like the comprehensive plan with suggestions for like a TND and this type of plan, that it should be walkable and accessible for all of the different parts of the plan. So I think it speaks right to that.
Sherry Richmond, cul-de-sacs here, I see a lot of greenery around there too. That may be because they're having to work with the lay of the land, that they're having to put those cul-de-sacs in there. So I think that might be a good question for the lay of the land as to how they're trying to put buildings in there, but not go across something that has to be protected. If you look at all the.
Yeah, I mean, I do
and
think
that may be a
is
good
part of it.
reason to keep the cul-de-sacs the way, or at least have that still as an option for the developer if he can't get across a stream.
Well, I think a comment could be if everything, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. So if I'm saying something you disagree with, you tell me, but a comment from the board could be something like reduce the number of cul-de-sacs.
Yes.
And that could be looked at.
Yeah.
And there may be engineering or other reasons why that's an issue. But certainly that could be something, it would be really difficult from this level to say how many you can't say no cul-de-sacs.
Right,
You're
right.
going to run into problems here or there, but that may be an example of what you might would have in the form of a recommendation. So.
I like that recommendation.
Could we,
Okay, well,
could we
everybody
get back to
make a-
location?
Yeah, so we're not, we want to start making a list of potential recommendations?
Yeah.
Reduce the limit or number of.
Are we still,
cul-de-sacs?
are we
We'll
still
come
on
back.
location for flipping
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah, we'll come back
Okay.
to that topic. I just want to, I think we reached some consensus on that point. That's why I wanted to go ahead and write it down. Is that true?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we're going to say.
Well, I say that and I don't even know everyone. Like I said yes, because I think, but yes, there's consensus.
Good ways to reduce, and we can refine the wording, reduce the number of cul-de-sacs. That's accurate.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And as we come across things like that, that seem like, there seems to be some consensus, we'll come up here. All right. Let's go back. All right, back to our mission at hand with the uses. What else about uses and location?
Is there any thought about the commercial, the location of the commercial parts of the development?
There's some strong opinions about commercial along Guilford College Road, where it would be across from single-family housing and also townhouses. So I don't know if single-family could be moved to, single-family could be moved to face single-family and then transition, whatever they, transition after that to townhouses. But just to have a blend of where it's T1, that's townhouses. FM farmer's market, there's no one that I know of who wants a farmer's market because it would eventually turn into commercial if it couldn't sustain itself. And that's right across from single family housing. And I don't think we put commercial across from single family housing.
I would also like to raise a concern about the farmer's market because my understanding is from the traffic study, there won't be a traffic light there, which is great. But it also means that there won't be a crosswalk. And if we're encouraging people to walk to the farmer's market, I think it needs to be at a place where there is a crosswalk to bring you there. So I would propose moving the farmer's market closer to the rest of the commercial space, actually.
Okay.
At the
Let's get
corner
back-
of Guilford and
Let's come back to that
Guilford
one.
College.
Let's conquer this idea of single family being next to existing single family. Is that something that you feel there's consensus on? If it's possible, that should be a goal, a high level goal, or we'll talk about it some more.
I think you need to repeat that. You lost me.
Okay, so the comment was, can single-family uses be located next to where existing, so in other words, when you have a neighborhood across the street, the single-family, that the proposed on the other side on this property would be single-family, not townhomes? Does that answer the question? Sorry, but I know these are barriers, having these. Speaking of buffers.
I think that would be pleasing to most of the people in single-family homes there, to have single-family homes facing them instead of the townhomes.
Okay.
Are you talking about on the perimeter?
Yeah.
Yes,
I'll
yeah.
give you guys a
T1,
accurate-
take out the farmer's market,
Yeah.
T1, and flip in single-family
Yeah.
housing.
But just a comment, you're not gonna have them facing the other single-family housing unless you want them to open up onto the road.
Which they
And
can't.
you can't do that, can you?
You're gonna have a big
Driveway.
buffer zone.
I mean, the existing housing across the street all has driveways.
Right.
This will not have driveways.
Yeah.
Right, I think the comment was, single-family uses across from the, obviously, yeah, they're not gonna have driveways onto the road.
So you're gonna have the back of the property, which,
But the idea would be to
But
have,
you're gonna have a big buffer zone.
that's where the buffering comes in.
Yeah.
is that one of those high-level things, like the cul-de-sacs? Is that something you wanna, suggest be looked at a little closer?
I think Russ and Kara and Sherry are probably well equipped to speak to those because you all live in neighborhoods that really,
Well, I live in a townhome,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
as I listen to what's have the single family, don't have them near the townhomes, makes me feel a little ostracized.
I think your townhome is lovely.
Well, I mean, it's a townhome, that's two, but they're all
The twins.
single family.
The twins.
It's not a
Right, right.
apartment
That's
complex.
right,
Right,
that's
right.
right.
So you don't feel like people on this Mackey Road side, you've not heard distress that those could be townhomes on the Mackey Road side?
We are in townhomes on.
Right. So that's not distressing to folks that
No,
live in
they
townhomes
just-
over here.
Sarah, what I've heard is actually from somebody in Russell's neighborhood,
Oh, okay.
concerned about the 1,400 square foot townhome being right across from the townhomes.
3,200 square foot.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's a little difference between 1,400 square feet and 1,300 square feet, cost-wise and otherwise. So. And I know you can't do exclusionary, I'm not saying that.
Right.
If we could refer back to some photos that we supplied back on August 24th, you can see how you can lay out the townhomes or single-family homes and enter from the side on multiple units and still have your garages out of one driveway. Sedgefield Villas has I think one of the better layouts for that particular type of, and I think I put a number of, on page, photo number 6, if you'll see a driveway going up, that supplies about 6 or 8 different units. So you're doing away with the cul-de-sacs. You're putting the cul-de-sacs on the property of where the people live.
It's kind of a cul-de-sac anyway. You're talking this picture right here?
Pardon? Yes.
Yeah.
Number 7 gives another idea of how one driveway serves a number of different units.
If we get back to farmer's market, which is really a sticking point with about 373 homes in the Cedarwood area, and some people in the town of Jamestown itself would like to either not have it at all, or at least have it moved to wherever the other commercial is, but not to have commercial by itself across from single-family homes with that road. I think that's a real sticking point with some people, some residents, is to not have that. I don't know if it wants to be flipped or just not have it. That's a question I have. We're still talking about location.
Right.
And one suggestion was to have single-family homes where T1 is, so it would blend. It's
Right.
nothing against townhomes, but just that it would blend with the use, the character, the nature of the area.
And just to be clear, you're talking about the T1.
T1
on
and
Guilford
FM.
College Road, correct?
Yes,
Right beside
yes, I'm
Farmers.
sorry,
So
yes.
You're not talking about T1 and other.
No,
You're
no.
just talking about that site.
Right, and just for location, the T1 that's over there on Mackey, then you can get down, as long as we get locations, what we're doing, then we can get later to what kind of building materials or density.
All right, so
Of
we got
that,
two
that's
questions about
that's on there.
location. One question is, so T1, so that's at the bottom of your site plan there, right beside the farmer's market. So the one idea is that becoming single family, and then the other idea is the farmer's market moving to another location, possibly near the commercial.
Can I ask, Richard, remind me where you live? What
I
neighborhood?
live in Hidden Valley. the other side of town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, just I didn't want to leave you out of the conversation if you were right here in Cedarwood too. So, do you think the folks in Cedarwood, to go to Genesis' point, if you couldn't see the homes that are there because of the buffering, would people care if they were townhomes or single family homes?
I think it's the idea of that possibly losing value for the single-family homes because they are then abutted, even though there's a street there, with townhomes. And I know the townhomes can bring up the value too. But the concern is that if it's a neighborhood, can we have a neighborhood across the street with single-family, probably children? I think they're looking at blending. Can we blend that a little bit better? If you have single family, that's across from single family, and then your townhomes behind that, that was just a concern that I keep hearing.
Okay.
Even if it's the back, then it just is it's similar to the neighborhood across the street would be single family. And then you can work on buffer later.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you can't see, basically, if you couldn't see any of this development because it's all buffered, if people would care whether the townhomes were on Guilford College or if they were in the middle of the, because it would be more of a contained, that you wouldn't need to blend it to anything, I would think, I don't know, but you wouldn't need to blend it if you can't see any of it anyway, so.
That's a good point. Then that would totally depend on the buffer. And if, 2 years from now, someone's going to cut down the trees or,
Yeah,
we've seen
well,
that
that's the thing,
happen.
how do we preserve the buffer once it's there?
That's happened
Public
before.
property. The buffering, in my opinion, is public property. That's not part of the lots.
I couldn't hear you.
The buffering is part of public property. It's like the sidewalk. Someone couldn't dig up the sidewalk. Buffering to me is, it's not owned by the property owners. It's owned by the community.
So we wouldn't cut the trees.
So they couldn't cut the trees.
I understand that. I've seen that happen in Greensboro for one reason or another. I'm just saying it could happen. And I don't know why it did. And then the owners got fined a lot of money, but it took a while for the trees to grow back.
I have to admit that happened in my neighborhood one time when I lived in Pennsylvania. And they forced the property owners to put the trees back at a significant expense. So people don't, that was a good lesson for everybody.
Good point.
So,
I have a question on the farmer's market. Who's going to maintain the farmer's market? Is that a town expense?
I think that goes into our other questions, like the ball fields,
right.
that we need answers to.
Well,
I don't
and
know.
at, I don't remember if it was a council meeting or I guess that wasn't a planning board meeting. The developer did mention, the farmer's market is just an idea that most communities want, that if we wanted it to just be, kind of open space, that would be fine. If people wanted it to be a farmer's market and have structure versus, again, just an open space that could be used for a farmer's market Saturday mornings, but not have to be. So I would encourage you to not get too hung up on the farmer's market thing, because we could say we don't want that, and it that's no skin off their nose. That's fine.
I don't think it's been forced on us.
No,
It's just
no.
been
That's just,
offered.
I think that was just like, this is a nice
Yeah.
thing that most people want. So,
I think getting back to Sherry's point, and Eddie, yours too, depending on what that space looks like and who maintains it, is an important thing to consider. So maybe we throw out the idea of, instead of a designated farmer's market, like we think of it in Greensboro with stalls and cement and pavilion space, we think of a multi-use kind of space that is relocated to someplace that makes a little bit more sense and is accessible to the larger community.
Okay, so maybe we can get one topic. So one topic is the farmer's market, and the idea of that being relocated to another place, and that it would be more of a multi-use type of a use versus just farmer's market. See most heads shaking.
No.
Is that, everybody good on that? All right.
I'm not good on that.
You're not good on that, okay.
No.
What's your concern?
I don't see the farmer's market being part of a community village
Okay.
to live in, a living place. A farmer's market should be out where commercial can easily access it, not in a residential district.
Okay.
I think what we're
Agreed.
thinking, Eddie, is that the suggestion would be to move it to the commercial area. And right now, maybe not consider it has to be a farmer's market, but just, it could be a multi-use space and
Okay.
by the commercial.
I'm
I'm not saying you're wrong, I just want to make sure.
I'm not
we're on
ready
the same
to
page.
concede that point.
That's fine.
All right, so is that something you want me to put up on the list as a recommendation? Got all but one, I want to have consensus. I don't say we need to vote or anything, but, want to make sure you all have some agreement on that.
I think we mostly agree,
Okay.
even if we don't necessarily agree there should be a farmer's market at all, but it should not be right here,
So,
right there.
I say it shouldn't be in the project at all.
Okay,
That's
so definitely not right here.
my contention.
I think Eddie has a good point. Move it for now because we're just looking at the big chunks.
okay.
But it probably should be examined as to who's going to keep it up, who's going to own it, and if it's necessary at all.
Whether it's needed.
If it's beneficial to the community.
And that may be questionable since we have one half a day a week now at the Baptist church.
I mean, I have heard from the people that I've talked to, they're not against a farmer's market. Particularly, no offense to the Baptist church, the Wednesday nights is not a convenient time for a lot of people. They're driving home, they're late, they want to get home to their families. So they're not against like a Saturday morning farmer's market. But Sherry, I know, the question of who owns it, what happens maybe in the winter months when it's not as used as a farmer's market, what does it really look like?
Right. So
Those are some of the details to kind
new
of
farmer's market,
get into.
commercial, examine, multi-use, or not at all. So let's examine, we'll examine both as part of the move, and see, whether or not it's something to, is that good? All right.
And while you're on that page, actually,
Yeah.
do you want to also put on there moving the amenities to the interior? Is that one that we've gotten consensus on?
Everybody go with that?
Yeah.
Centrally located amenities in the interior. Okay. Move amenities.
And I think we also had consensus, on the ballpark of not having it on that corner. Even if it doesn't end up being a ballpark, even if it's just a recreational space, to move it somewhere else.
Okay.
And moving the age-targeted housing to a better spot.
Ballpark.
Away from the railroad track.
Yes, away from the railroad tracks.
Ballpark by railroad
Although
track.
I hear it is going. It's not gone.
Age targeted to corner of Mackey and Guilford College Road.
Sarah, I could get back to your point about the townhomes versus single-family homes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right with, if there's a nice enough buffer, does it really matter as much? I would say it depends on the finer details of what those townhomes look like.
Sure.
The density and massing of those, the lot sizes.
Yeah.
If they're really nice townhomes like Jordan Creek, great. Those can go across the street from my house or a little ways down.
Yeah.
It is.
If
I
they're
didn't
the,
have a strong opinion on it, I just was curious.
if they're the townhomes, behind Food Lion, I don't think that would fit the style of the area.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the movie.
I don't know, I like the ones that are right
So
behind
we're,
Food Lion.
I
They
don't-
look like they
yeah.
belong in New York.
I don't want to leave that one until you're okay with
Not the other
that.
ones.
Correct.
Are you okay with townhomes across from Cedarwood?
I have to speak up for Cedarwood. They do want the single-family homes for whatever reason, different reasons, and I have to express those
But
opinions.
that would be on Guilford Road, but on Mackey Road, you could have townhomes across from townhomes. As long as they were complementing each other.
So what's everybody else's opinion on the T1 that's located on Guilford College Road across from Cedarwood, is that something that you feel like either A, should be single-family housing because it's across the road from it, or with the appropriate buffering, doesn't matter if it's townhomes or single-family homes? That seems to be two things I heard.
Well, if it's just me, I mean, I would definitely concede to just single-family homes. And I think it would also help with the density and massing if it were single-family homes compared to townhomes. So I could also speak to that point of just making T1 on Guilford College Road, single-family.
Okay. Anybody else feel strongly about that point?
I think the people that live in Jordan's Creek would be a lot more comfortable with single-family townhome or single-story buildings than two-story townhomes
So what's there now?
with single garages or
Well,
that's compatible with.
the townhomes in Jordan Creek they can be two-story. You've got it
Yeah,
upstairs
almost
that you can
sure.
finish if you want to, but they're all basically one level until you spend the money to finish upstairs.
I guess,
Those
you
are
know,
just that's a story and a half though, isn't it?
I guess you'd say,
Story and a half, not a straight.
it's not full.
I guess I need a point of clarification too, because when I think townhomes, I think 2 stories or more. And when I think of like what's out at Sedgefields at Villa, I don't know the official name, but I've heard them called patio homes, where they're single story attached. So I don't know what the intent is for this, for the developer. Because I don't know if I'm working on the same definition of townhome as the developer worked on. You know what I mean? So I guess that would just be a point to clarify.
Well, I think of townhomes as either a story and a half or 2-story. And one person owns up and down.
Yeah.
Condos are over,
Yep.
you have a condo up above somebody.
Right.
And the ones over behind public look to me more like condos.
Yeah.
You know, because there are multiple layers up there. So you-
No, I'm not talking about those. I'm talking the Sedgefield, the villas at Sedgefield.
Oh,
Of what those
okay.
are classified as.
Oh, those are, oh, I see.
I call it patio.
That's a
homes.
mixture. Some of those are not connected,
Yeah.
but many of them are connected in quadrants of 2 to 4, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't know if
That's
we're
a-
thinking of those as townhomes too, when we talk about things in this, or if the developer was not thinking of that kind of,
Well, if you look at the illustration in the packet on page
yeah,
16,
it's more
17,
traditional,
that
what I think of as
that
townhomes.
shows you what the vision being proposed is for
Yeah, it's
that.
pretty traditional.
Yeah,
And I think especially if we're envisioning that, then we don't want that across from single-family homes on Guilford College Road in Cedarwood. I think the Cedarwood residents are concerned about large 2-story
volume.
buildings, across the street.
So probably single family on Guilford Road and move the townhomes somewhere else in the property.
but the
And
single
and are you
family might
saying
be 2-story,
specifically
right?
1-story single family, or does
Yeah.
it not matter if they're single family?
I don't think that matters.
So people don't want to look at a 2-story townhouse, but they're fine with looking at the back of a 2-story home. I'm just saying, you know,
Yeah, no, I
there
think
needs to be flexibility.
Yeah,
question.
I think so, because especially if you look at their illustrative drawing,
Just one big block.
especially because they're they're just so big.
Mhm.
It makes you really feel like you're across from like an apartment style almost.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that makes
single-family housing, you would have spaces between, and it would probably blend a little bit better.
I
than
just
one large
wanted
unit.
clarity as far as, you know, if we're talking about buffers not being tall enough to cover a 2-story, then,
Right.
you know, I could see
Yeah.
that if you were saying, so we only want single floor, single family across from, because, you know, as far as Cedarwood on that street, in the majority, when I'm thinking about it, are more of the ranch style, single story. So I didn't know if you wanted to mimic that, or if it's fine as long as it could be a 3-story house, but it would have to be a single home.
And we can also ask
So is that something you would like to put on the list? Is that particular area be shown as single family versus townhome development?
I think that will make it a lot more palatable to our biggest neighbor
Okay,
and could reduce a lot of opposition.
I'm looking for shaking heads or,
I agree with that.
So,
all right, that's gonna go on the list. Certainly, you can always refine this.
Sure.
So we got the townhome area.
It's north and east. Which is north, which is south.
Across the block, across from you.
uh-huh.
I guess this is the east here.
Yeah, north is.
This is north.
All right,
Okay, north, south,
okay.
east, west.
While we're on the topic of location, Sarah, do you want to talk about your corner?
Oh, Lord. Yes. So, this is, again, my own personal mission, apparently. I don't know, maybe I need to give it up. But this Guilford Road and Guilford College Road corner here where it's Civic, I've just had concerns about the traffic there, which, I've looked at the traffic study and such, and they don't have concerns, but I don't know if their standard to trigger a concern is the same as my standard to trigger a concern. So I've had concerns about the traffic there. And then there is this big buffer here with the power lines between that and Whittington Hall. But there's also like some single families across the way on Guilford Road. And I just don't find that a big civic use there is really compatible with what's around it. And another concern that I have, and this would be something, I guess that if other people thought it was worthwhile to find out more about, what I'm concerned about is that I don't know if the developer's plan is to just basically clear cut this property and then sell it to anyone who wants a civic use. And in that case, typically, some of the civic uses like that are proposed, they have no tax revenue attached to them. They don't pay property tax.
Right.
So I don't necessarily see anything that Jamestown is missing that we need on that corner that's really going to add value to our community in terms of what it is, since we won't get any tax revenue from it. And so it just seems to me like it's a chance for and the developer is out to make money. This is his job and this is what they do. So I don't want to negate that, but it just seems like the point of this is to just sell that piece off, make some money off it for something the town's not going to see any benefit from. So, or value add, I guess. Maybe there would be some benefit, but. So my thought is to not have that in that location, whether it's moved someplace else or just doesn't exist.
Okay.
I believe under the PUD plan, we can have a say in what they do down the road. If they sell that to another developer or any part of it to another developer, we can still say and help control what goes in.
Right.
Yeah, well,
Is that right?
I guess I'm not seeing
Right.
anything in the civic
Yeah.
realm that,
So
That
that's
we
one
need on that
stipulation
one.
we should really put into play is that we will always have a say in what is developed 10 years from now. Because it's going to take a while. And then probably more than one developer come forth to help develop it.
yeah, but
And
guess
we've gotta have-
for me, I'm not worried, I'm not even talking about like, I'm afraid it's not gonna be something that looks nicer. So I'm just saying, I don't see anything that fits in the civic zoning that's gonna bring a value add to Jamestown enough to warrant taking that corner out and adding headache with traffic and to the surrounding neighbors for not being a compatible use, so.
But isn't part of the PUD though for us to agree with acceptable uses for these areas? So when we finish this, they'll know what they can use it for, rather than saying, down the road, we get to decide whether the use you bring there is acceptable or not. I think we need to give them an acceptable use.
Well, I think what they're
Zoning
proposing as
wise.
acceptable use is civic, so it would be zone civic, is my understanding.
And we can suggest something different.
Right, but what I'm saying is that me personally, this is me personally, I do not see anything that fits in the civic zoning that's gonna bring value to Jamestown that would warrant the disruption to the neighbors and the traffic in that corner.
Gotcha.
I tend to agree, Sherry Richmond, I tend to agree with Sarah, unless if it's donated to Jamestown, correct? That's my assumption.
One of the thing in the plan that it suggests is a church, and, a church is not gonna be run by Jamestown. So I assume the land would be sold to someone to build a church on, if that's.
Right, if it's civic, then it'd be sold to Jamestown or GTCC.
I don't know who it would be sold to, but certainly a church is not gonna be built by Jamestown. If Jamestown were to buy that land, which I don't think they are
That's my
looking to do,
question. So this
they're
is,
not gonna build a church on it.
they're looking for someone to take that as for civic or church. And then I agree with you that that's kind of an odd place to add some more traffic. And because it also has single family on one side and single family on the
Right,
other.
yeah. It just seems, it really does not seem to conform with the surroundings. And again, this is just me. Maybe I just am on a personal crusade about this corner for some reason. I don't know, but I just feel like it would be disruptive to what's around it. And for what the uses that you can put in a piece of land zoned as civic, I don't see anything like, I think another suggestion was, police department or fire department. And so that I assume would be, then the land would be sold to the county to build that on. Jamestown would never acquire this piece of land as far as I know, but I mean.
Not as like public space.
Right, yes.
Well, maybe an unusual idea would be if the developer, I don't know how much land that is, donated that as a park. I don't know, but anyway, to flip it.
Really you can see the rest of it along the whole rest of Guilford College Road is just going to remain as it is. I'm guessing that means this is the only usable terrain that there is. And that's why they want to have that zone as civic, is what I'm guessing. I'm just saying, I don't know if that makes sense for Jamestown. So I don't know if it necessarily needs to be anything, if it could just stay the way it is.
So you would just suggest making it to open space natural area?
Yeah.
Well, I think if we're talking about location and to see how people agree with you, that it just remain as it is.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Green space,
Yeah, just,
but to not have
it would
that.
just blend with number with two, in my vision. Again, this is my own. I've had some folks at Whittington Hall, say, yeah, we don't want anything there, but, it hasn't been a massive campaign or anything. It's just.
Could that be the farmer's market / multi-use space?
Still
That might
lacks
be a
traffic.
terrible idea.
That still adds the traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for what you're
Alright.
saying, you would just want to keep it, extend that natural space and just
Yeah.
see that as like,
Yeah.
we're concerned about buffers around the whole perimeter and that whole strip. It would be one large buffer
Yes.
between that and.
Plus you're
Yeah.
in the commercial space
Yeah.
across the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah. So, and, I've never been on the interior of this area. So I don't know, but like if that's something that the walking trails could continue over there, or they could have some biking trails, maybe there's a use for it. I just don't think that corner needs to be any different than number 2.
Is that something you feel strongly about tonight, that you want to make that kind of decision, or you just want to think about it, add it to our list?
Let's think about it.
I'm not ready to make any decision.
Yeah.
Sure, well, I mean, whether or not that becomes you think that's something that ought to go on this other consensus list, or you just want to think about it a little bit. I mean, we've got it noted here. All these are things you're going to be thinking about, you're right. These aren't recommendations yet.
It would be hard for me to be opposed to a church in a residential community. Because that.
But it wouldn't be in the community is the thing. That's why I'm saying I mean, if there's something that's saying that this community is gonna generate enough people to warrant a whole nother church or mosque or temple or whatnot, then yeah, then that would be a value add. But unless we have something that's saying this community, I mean, I personally haven't had anyone come up to me and say, we really need more churches. We really need another fire department in Jamestown. I had no one say anything like that to me. So.
I've heard the opposite.
Yeah,
actually.
so I mean, it's not that I'm opposed to any of the things that would necessarily go there in terms of what they are. I'm just opposed to it not conforming to what's around it. And that it just appears to be an add-on for the developer to make some money off of.
Well, in a lot of places, if it weren't a town like us, I mean, that would be a perfect convenient mart with gas pumps and go in and get convenient food in the middle of the night, which we don't want there.
No, so that's why I'm saying keep it number 2.
But that's why having a church or something like that would certainly be a lot better than a convenience.
Yeah, absolutely. But having nothing, I think, would be better.
Yeah, I
than
think
that.
if we have the option of just saying, you know, can we continue that since it already, that seems like the natural progression for that little strip there, except for the part closer to GTCC, could that just remain wooded? And again, just be sort of like a very large buffer between these two parts of the community. So I would suggest, you know, not making a firm decision right now. And if they're, you know, if the town or the developer or anyone else has a great suggestion for specifically what could be there, or if the sheriff's department says we absolutely need another substation and this is why, then, you know, we would be able to consider that. But, you know, I don't think we have enough information otherwise.
Yeah, I'm definitely not suggesting this become a gas station or anything here. I'm just suggesting it just stay exactly the way it is.
I was just trying to put in perspective a church versus.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's why they had proposed the civic zoning, because it would have the least impact of anything that would be developed there. But again, typically the uses on a civic zoning don't generate any tax revenue. So if it doesn't add a service to the community that we need, then there really is no value that Jamestown is getting out of that piece of property being developed in any way. It doesn't get a financial gain, it doesn't get a service gain, so.
Okay.
It would be nice to add open space. It would be another thing about open space to add to this development too. Here's some more open space for you along with that buffer, because that's a funny corner.
Okay. All right, got that noted. Are there other uses? Things about location of uses on the site that you feel like need to be examined a little closer, moved, covered a lot?
There was one version of the plan, you know, where the mixed use is here, right across from where we were just speaking of. There was a version of the plan that had all of the retail moved just right into the interior.
Okay.
And then it seems like part of it's come out again. So I don't know if that's something, if it's on that side of the road, if it doesn't really bother people, since it's something you'd be turning, you know, right onto Guilford College, or if people would prefer there really not be any retail right at, you know, facing the road, if that could all be tucked inside, or that's just something I know people had a big concern about when the initial plan was released, and then that was adapted some, and all the retail was moved in, and now with this plan, part of it's moved out again, so.
Well, of course, that way, if we leave that all open space, then you're gonna have that development across the street from open space and with a good buffer zone with the adjoining subdivisions.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't be a visible. Now, I don't know if it is. We certainly need a certain amount of commercial with restaurants and so forth to serve a community that big, or the business community of Jamestown is going to be overwhelmed and we won't be able to get in our favorite restaurant. There's got to be.
There was a version of the plan that had all that moved
Yes.
into.
Yes, I remember
So
that.
it wouldn't be taking away any ability to do retail, but just not having it on that main street, but that may not be an issue. I just know that that was a big deal for a lot of people, and I hadn't heard as much about it recently, so.
I think I remember that people were happier if that were in the middle.
Mhm.
The commercial was in the middle of this development and served it. Or a possibility would be to move it down where we had thought to put the ballparks, where it's near Sheets and some of the other commercial. Because that, down there by the railroad tracks, that's not too far from the other commercial areas, right? Rather than have it right there on that corner. And then you get to one of the other questions. It's location, yes, but you get to one of the other concerns about what it would take away from Jamestown. So would we have two business districts? The one on the corner here and then the one down in Jamestown, or commercial districts, commercial
With the
areas.
size of this development, it seems like there's gonna be plenty of people to take care of both. I'm more concerned about ours being overwhelmed here in town if there's not significant for services. It's a residential development.
Well, again, I want to speak to like the T&D and the PUD. Like one of the advantages of that, or one of the key components, is the walkability and accessibility. And I think if we move that commercial space to where the age-targeted space was, where the ballpark may or may not be going, it's not really in a walkable location. So I think we would just need to keep in mind, is that a priority, moving the commercial space farther away from all of the residential spaces? Does it warrant overlooking the T&D and PUD components for that? Maybe. Or do we want more of those T&D and PUD components, and therefore the mixed use and commercial space where it is or close by? I don't know the answer.
Can you walk down for supper and have supper and then walk back home?
That's right.
Walking up that hill on Mackey Road, I probably couldn't make it.
I guess I have mixed feelings, and at least where it's located now, it's not across from any single-family neighborhood or anything.
Across from any house.
My concern would be if it is moved more interior, then those businesses are less accessible for the people walking from not that neighborhood. So, if I wanted to ride my bike with the kids down to, say there was an ice cream shop there to get ice cream, we'd be less inclined to do so if we'd go all the way in the neighborhood.
And with that, then, welcome big signs saying, ice cream shop,
Yeah,
like
that's
over
right,
these
yeah.
lovely fields and buffers.
Yeah, again, I think
Here's
if
a big
they're
bright sign.
with buffers, then,
This location.
but it still might be a real concern for other folks that want it more interior.
If there's ice cream, I want it accessible.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm not hearing a lot of, let's move it. Sounds like maybe it's okay where it's at. Right? Okay,
Revisit if we need to.
all right. Other,
Well, I did want to talk about it, someone brought it up just well, at the beginning, it wasn't a minute ago, but the pipeline, because it was brought up by Benchmark. Was it you, Ross, who talked about the pipeline?
I didn't realize it was going into it.
Yeah, I didn't either. But this from Benchmark says, there's concern about putting homes on the east side of it without an exit that doesn't require crossing back over the pipeline. And I think that's a valid concern. I mean, certainly that would be something for fire marshal or something to address.
But it's sort of wedged in there with water and the gas line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing the concern that Benchmark has is if there was a disruption to the pipeline, people are trapped now behind that. So I think that might be something we need more information on.
Well, the ball field's not necessarily bothered by it,
no,
or the parking area, but,
Yeah, I think it's just these few kind of like,
the T1 and,
well, the T1 has an exit onto Mac.
oh, yeah, you're right. To the
Yeah,
right
it's just
that.
kind of that like up in,
right.
I guess it's part of S3 and then S2, there's just a little bit that goes over it.
Mhm.
But I guess we're saying anyway that S2 should move. So it's just that little portion of S3.
Right.
So, okay, I mean, that is way out of my area of expertise, but since it was brought up, I just thought it might be something
Sure.
we should get more information on.
Does that go on the list? The one over here? The pipeline?
It's on the list to get more information about.
Yeah, more information on
The schematic on page 9 is something on there that indicates where the pipeline runs across.
Yeah.
It's, there was this like diagram.
It's still up there, that's what I thought.
it. Yeah.
Okay. Any other big picture, site plan, location, uses, anything else that fits in that realm you want to add to this list?
But do we ever talk about where you want the amenities to go in that big, beautiful building that's reminiscent of the
Oh, yeah, the lodge.
lodge and Cedarwood,
Where's it proposed now?
proposed now up on Guilford Road?
It's the mixed use space, right?
Didn't we move that in the middle?
Oh, yeah, so that's over the.
We moved that in the
Commercial.
middle.
That's what I thought I heard was to move the amenities to the
To
interior.
the interior.
Well, because there's the building, but there's also the junior Olympic pool, playground,
Yeah.
you know, all those other things. So I think, you know, maybe, are we saying we'd be okay losing the visibility of that building if it also meant that the pool and everything were tucked away too?
So making it centrally located to the entire development is what I heard and wrote down. So that's.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be better for them.
All right. Well, we can certainly come back to that. We still have a big list here. So I think we took, we touched on some of these topics. I don't know that we really talked about architectural, building materials and character. Is that something we want to, seem to come up, but we really didn't have a answer on any of those. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Can we talk about buffering first? Because I think a lot of
Sure.
architectural detail might be dictated by buffering.
Let's do it.
I think the buffering's important.
All right, let's talk about that.
Dennis, you want to start?
Well, obviously, the plan started out with sidewalk along Guilford.
Yeah.
It didn't say sidewalk along Mackey, and I think there should be sidewalk
Okay.
along Mackey as well.
All right.
Well, I don't know if there's sidewalk all along Guilford College Road, actually.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
there?
on the opposite side.
Is there, for sure? Can we clarify that?
But I think we also talked about,
We talked about Mackey Road having sidewalks on that side.
On that side.
yeah, and I think we also talked about Guilford College having it on the side of the development, right? Didn't we?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Did we?
okay, sorry.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So we're still.
Mackey Road sidewalks.
All right. Okay, that's one issue. What else is related to buffering?
In order to have sidewalks, you need curb and gutter. And I think I asked about that last meeting, and that's in discussion or can be discussed between us, the builder or developer, and the town.
There's curbing along Guilford College now, because I walk that side of the road a lot.
Yeah, Guilford College Road
Not
is
Mackey.
curb and gutter.
Yeah, Mackey.
Mackey Road is not.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's Mackey Road, just like grass
Mackey
buffer?
Road's just like a dirt berm.
Oh, okay, oh, okay.
Wherever the road ends, there's a dirt berm on the outside of it.
There is a little section that's got.
Yeah, there's a little.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, each development,
Johnson's driveway down toward the creek. There's a section that's got some curve.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
Jordan's Creek has it going both ways, coming out, maybe 50, 75 feet, maybe 100 feet, I don't know.
Well, there is sidewalk on the whole property
One.
that
Okay.
what Jordan Creek is. Of course, that's curved.
Yeah. All right, the development next to Jordan's Creek that will be coming available sometime in the very near future. I spoke to the developer last week. He is connecting curb and gutter to Jordan's Creek and Bordeaux, which will be north, if you want to just say north and south of the
And
development.
just, because I don't know a lot about this, so just for my own education, could you, what's the benefit of curb and gutter versus the berm? Or
Well, you
just
know,
that, I really don't know.
the road is paved to the curb,
Right.
and you have water runoff into a drainage ditch or pipe, rather than a ditch that will overflow.
Okay, so it's for water
Wash
flow
out.
issues and safety issues, I assume, as
Yeah,
well?
it's very safe.
Yeah,
Be a lot more safe.
the curb rather than.
And my concern will be if we don't get it at the beginning, we'll never have it.
So, but you're specifically talking about Mackey Road.
Mackey Road,
Okay.
because the other road is curb and gutter.
Yeah, the whole length. That's the whole
Length
length,
of
yeah.
it, yeah.
That was done when they built it, that bypass road or whatever they call
And I don't know if there'll be turn lanes on Mackey Road for the project or not. I don't know. I would think the state would have some say on that too.
They will have these things.
That would affect the buffering too. If we're looking, if we find out if we need turn lanes, that would affect how much of a buffer that the developer would have to have. Because if it's 50 feet and then later they have a turn lane, that cuts out some of the buffer. Am I
You know,
right?
speaking of that too, and I don't want to get us too off topic, but another thing to revisit at some point is, I don't know if we could have the person who did the traffic study maybe come back or someone, because I think you have to be an expert in traffic control to read that report. I found it hard to read. The diagrams are difficult to follow. And so it might be nice to just have someone who in layperson's terms can say, oh, here's where you're gonna have turning lanes here, and just so we can better visualize.
The developer also told me that the Greensboro side of Mackey Road will be 4 lanes with a turn lane.
I'm sorry, sir. Which?
The Greensboro city from Jordan Creek,
Is this Jordan?
from that
There.
point, that
Oh,
way,
that way.
will be, that's Greensboro city.
Yeah, oh, yeah, okay.
And they have plans, but here again, when
So they're
it's
gonna
not
widen-
already done, when will it be done?
Yeah, they're gonna widen the road,
Yeah,
kind of like they did on Guilford College.
yes.
Will it be
So he said.
divided 4 lane or just 4 lane?
Or-
Will it be divided 4 lanes with a median? Or
Like a
just-
Gilbert College.
Yeah.
I don't know about the median. I think it'll be a turn lane.
Oh, turn lane, okay.
Okay. All right.
That would affect how much buffer the developer has to have when we find out about turn lanes and other things that would determine what we do there with buffering.
Matthew, has there been any discussion on curb and gutter?
If I remember correctly, all of the plan profiles for the street show curb and gutter.
That helps.
A question I had about buffering, and Russ, I'm gonna look to you again because you're on this side, because you're on Mackey Road. It looks like we have that buffer along Guilford College. I think it was 50-foot buffer, I think. But it doesn't look like we have it on Mackey Road at all. And is that something that the folks who live over in the neighborhoods over on Mackey are gonna want the same kind of buffering?
Yes.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, so the 50-foot buffer You want to see the same thing
On Mackey
on
Road.
Mackey.
It's
Okay.
required on Guilford College because of the bypass.
Oh, that's right,
The
it's a
scenic
scenic
bypass.
overlay, yeah.
Yeah, or scenic, yeah. But I would say yes, the same on Mackey.
Okay. I'll just tack that on to the,
And I think what I'm hearing too, particularly for Cedarwood, at least on Guilford College, but it probably would affect Mackey as well, is I don't know, it might be in here, gosh, I'm starting to forget everything. Are there any mandates about like how tall the buffers are? What kind, like, is it all trees or what kind of buffers are there? I've done some reading about buffers and, and so I know there's different kinds of buffers, but it sounds like, roof lines are a topic and kind of, so if it's all tall trees and then we don't, and it's pretty thick and we don't see anything, or is a buffer considered a tree here, a tree here, a tree, just kind of spread out? I guess I don't know enough about what does a buffer contain to be considered a buffer. Maybe Jennifer, I don't know if you know more about that.
No, I don't know anything about it officially. Obviously, I do a lot of walking. So
Yeah,
I go past a lot of property when I walk. I'm all
Yeah.
over Greensboro, High Point, and
well,
Winston.
if you look at page 14, you can at least see what's proposed for a landscape buffer. And, one thing I think, seems to be maybe missing, would be the existing vegetation. How's that being incorporated into, what they're showing there is just an example illustrative buffer.
Yeah, and I guess, does it say on here like how tall all that is? Because I'm thinking, a lot of Guilford College Road, and probably
Tells
on
you the
that.
height.
The heights are on here,
Yeah, the
Oh, they're
height.
on there, okay.
page 14.
So they're saying that 6-foot tree, willow oak trees would be planted, 24-inch
6 foot.
shrubs and 24-inch, two different varieties of
Okay,
shrubs.
so, I mean, shrubs certainly aren't going to disguise the neighborhood at all. I don't know how tall the 6-foot trees will eventually grow, but it's not, they're gonna be they're not gonna be,
Willow oaks, so they'll get pretty big.
they're not gonna be 30 feet for a while, I'm saying. So, because I'm thinking like, a lot of Guilford College Road was there already. And maybe on Mackey too, but I don't go down to Mackey as much, but what's already there is huge trees. And if those could stay, that's good. But I know there's a section on Guilford College, probably up towards where the ballpark would be, somewhere in there, where it's, where the cows used to graze. And it's just some trees kind of spread out. You would definitely see development there. It would not be hidden by any means. And so I guess I'm just kind of thinking what people would want for a buffer, and do we, what options do we have there, and what, because I don't know, a 24-inch shrub is, I mean, I can step over that,
that's not
that's nothing, so.
I submitted some photos for Exhibit A a couple of weeks ago, and Sherry will point out that
Are
these
they
are
the ones
not,
that we saw before, or did you submit more?
no, these are the ones I submitted previously, amenity
Okay.
buffers. Sherry will point out that they're not native trees, and I'm sorry about that. I was not paying attention to the variety, more just the fact that you can't see what's behind those buffers. And that is the density
Like
or
this?
style of buffer. Yeah,
Yeah,
those are all along Guilford College Road mostly. A few are in front of like Woodington Hall. There may be one by Woodbine, but they're all in front of existing neighborhoods in the area, and you can't see what's behind them.
yeah. I mean, I know that's my preference, but it may not be everyone's. So I don't know if we want a discussion about, if we're talking about buffers, like what, not only do we need one on Mackey, but also what do we want those buffers to be? Do we want them to be a shield that hides the neighborhood?
Yes.
Or do we want them to be something different?
Yes.
I think
We want
hiding
them
the
to-
neighborhood
we want
is
them-
generally what we mean when we say buffer, is to have that. And if we keep the trees, if they keep the trees that are there, they're still growing. Because a lot of those trees, that area had larger trees before the Department of Transportation widened the road, and so all of them were cut down. And so the ones that are growing back have taken since 2009 to grow halfway decent again. That's a long time. So if they left what is there, and then on the other side, facing the residents who live in Castleton, where they can see a lovely landscaping but more trees. And this might be something we want to look into to help the developer with our ideas, especially with native plants or native trees. And this is an aside, but I went to a park recently and it was a green desert because of the plants that are there, did not appeal to any pollinator at all. So why can't we plant, or look into that? That would take a little bit of study, but it might be helpful for us and for the future of that area.
Okay, so I think I saw everybody's head shake yes about more extensive buffering that would hide the development.
That's the
More
whole-
density,
Or density.
more density.
More density of the buffer, yeah, more dense buffer. And
Height.
taller, and taller.
Yeah.
buffer.
Well, I mean, you start off with a berm,
Yeah.
you start off with a mound.
Yep.
And then build on top of that.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. And those are the ones that I've seen that have been most effective. They start off with a dirt berm or a dirt mound
Yeah.
of some kind that's maybe 4 to 6 feet high.
Right.
And, it's graded,
Yeah. Yep.
but it kind of like is a hump.
Yeah,
And then you build on top of that.
Yeah.
And that provides
Build a
buffer
buffer.
from traffic for one thing. The ground buffers the traffic noise. Then the shrubbery and the stuff on top buffer the site of the buildings.
Good point.
Yeah, the noise.
Then the 6-foot tree means something.
Yes, then a 6-foot
Right,
tree
right,
means
yeah.
something, especially when you're walking or driving,
Yeah.
because then you're looking up at it,
Yeah.
and it's even
Yeah.
that much higher.
Yeah.
Which is better in my opinion.
All right.
you've met Brian, he could look over a 6-foot tree if it was just on the ground.
You could look down at a 6-foot,
Yes.
Okay,
unless he's tripping,
all right.
because he has.
Is that capture that point?
I think so, yeah.
The only thing I might want to bring up about buffering, it kind of relates, I think, our streetlights.
Oh, yeah, I want to bring that up.
Well, along Guilford
Yeah,
Common especially,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think I've heard from the neighbors that I've spoken with that they are more opposed to streetlights across the street along Guilford College Road. They enjoy the fact that it feels like we're in the country. And I think streetlights would take away from that. I realize I'm one of them, somebody who likes to run early in the morning or in the evenings when it's dark out.
Yep.
But I'm also perfectly happy wearing my headlamp, so.
Well, we wear headlamps too, and you still can't see because they don't maintain the sidewalk. And no offense to the people who live along that, I'm certainly not going to all, but some of the folks don't mow their lawn, so they're also responsible for the sidewalk creepage going on. Yeah, I mean, maybe they, like in town, Jamestown, we don't have huge streetlights, I don't know if there'd be an option to have, more in line with what in town we have, because they don't give off as much light to be assaulting to someone who lives nearby. And I can speak to that, because we have a street light right in front of our house, and it's totally fine.
Plus, you could mute the view of the light and make it shine down. You put some kind of a cap on it that makes it shine kind of like in a cone.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it just gives you
Not into
the
lights,
reference of a light being there, so geez, I'm still on the road.
Yeah,
Yeah, I walk a lot in the dark too, and it's
yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, even with lights. it's
Have that
not
more yellow color instead of the bright.
bright one.
Yeah, and then it's a muted light
Yeah,
that
like
you get.
bright,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I do think the style of the streetlights in Jamestown is very unique.
Yes,
And so I
yeah.
think it would be important to follow
Yeah.
that
Yeah, I agree.
in style.
And I feel for I wouldn't want a giant spotlight in my house either, believe me, so.
But if we're talking about the people who are in Cedarwood, these lights would be across multiple lanes and on the other side of
Right.
the
Yeah.
sidewalk. So, I mean,
Yeah.
and I think if you're going to have sidewalks, the responsible thing to do is you need to light them, so.
Right.
And when North Carolina DOT puts the trees and shrubs in the berm in the
Yeah, that's
middle,
right,
like they said they were gonna
that's right,
10 years ago when they built the road,
yeah.
which never got there.
That was a question.
The other question I have about buffering is, we're also, in my opinion, we're forgetting the area that's to the left of what is now designed as the ballpark. There's townhouses in there, they're next to the Jordan Park. I think the rear end of that needs to be
Yes.
buffered as well
Yes, I agree.
from the existing property.
Yes.
Is that John Creek that it was again?
Yes, that.
That's what I meant. I mean, you know, when I said buffering initially, I meant the stuff along the big road.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, you know, frankly, if it's buffered correctly, I don't care what's in there. And you may all recall the first meeting that I attended, I said I had that happen to me when I was in Pennsylvania. I had a 5 acre or 4.5 acre farm, and I had townhouses come in right next to me. The way they buffered that, I couldn't see them, and I didn't even know those people were there.
Yeah.
Which was perfect.
So help me out. So Jordan's Creek,
Yeah, it's that little T1 area.
right across from the K. So
To the
are you
left of
saying
Mackey Road.
buffering even with the edge where it adjoins existing townhomes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
The whole site?
yes.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, so it doesn't encroach on that neighborhood.
And that may exist up at the
Especially
two
where it is abuts
existing
North
housing.
Creek. There is some vegetation,
Just keep it. Yeah, keep the vegetation.
but it needs to be better. It's just the natural.
And that may also apply to the T1 area up at the top left-hand corner. I'm just not sure what's on the other side of that. It looks like housing.
We have to look at that.
I think that's Adam's
This
Farm.
one up here.
I think that's Adam's Farm.
Is that, no, I thought Adams Farm was across the street.
Mhm.
Whatever it is up here.
Yeah, that's, I think a part of
That's
Adam's
this is the
Farm.
piece I'm talking about.
Yep.
Any other specific concerns about buffering?
Well, we'd want a proposal, I think.
Right, right, yeah.
With something more than 20-foot, 4-inch shrubs.
Yeah, more than what's in here. I mean, I think that's not adequate at all.
Right. Buffer that blocks views, berm, density, height, vegetation, native vegetation, what other, would you need more
I
qualifiers?
think this kind of relates. So if we go to page 12 of the recreation plan, section 5 is a suggested trailhead, and I'm not clear about what that means. And so I think depending on what that looks like and what they're talking about for a trailhead, I've heard a gravel parking lot thrown out there as an idea, or just a bike rack. So depending on what that trailhead I think looks like and what's envisioned for that space, buffering is important in that space also.
Okay.
Page 12.
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, down, yeah, okay.
All right.
That's a real good question, because if it's, how do people get there, or is it just for walking only, no parking? You know, I'm assuming that it's just walking to get
Typically,
there.
a trailhead is the start of a trail, they may have a sign,
Right.
nothing else.
Mhm.
Just
I don't know, Jen, aren't there small parking lots associated with most of them?
Sometimes it depends.
some do, some don't.
I know on the, way back when, where the greenway is on East Fork, there used to be a big problem with cars parking along
Right.
the side of the street, because it wasn't well marked that you could park, I guess, in a golf course to get to the trailhead, so, so even if there's no parking lot there, it would be interesting to know what, again, going to human behavior, what people's behavior, would they park in Cedarwood to try to get there, to go walking, or would people not go? It would just be mostly the residents of this development, I don't know. But, I mean, the trail's a great idea, I'm just, yeah.
Well, and I think there's probably some unanswered questions, just because, you've talked about moving the amenity area into the center. And so the trailhead was proposed at that amenity area, which is not there anymore, maybe, depending on how all this comes together. So it's most likely that trailhead location would shift to somewhere else. If there needs to be there. Okay, so do we cover buffering, or is there still more?
It's a good start.
Good start. Okay, so we've gone through a whole bunch of issues with location, uses, amenities. We've got a great list here. We've looked at buffering. So left on the list that we haven't really talked about. We haven't really talked about architectural styles, density, price point, community impact.
Jason, before can we, take a break?
That's up to you guys.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. Does that work for everyone? So it
Sure.
is 7:54. We'll meet at 8 o'clock. 6-minute break.
Matthew, hang on.
I'm gonna go search them for buffer.
Do it. That's what I did.
That
I drove
I searched.
around. Yeah.
My first concern is the road size and stuff like that.
Okay, are we all ready to?
That's what I did.
reconvene
I
here?
drove around.
Yeah, that's what I
Like,
walked.
everything
I basically
in
walked.
my bag.
Okay, before we start in with another topic, I have learned that we have someone in the audience who may have some expertise on some of the things we've talked about. So I was wondering, Jane, do you want to enlighten us on some of the historic nature of what we've been talking about and traffic and that kind of thing? Oh, shoot. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize Katie wasn't here.
Can everybody hear me?
There we-
Come up.
But I didn't bring my,
cannot.
I didn't bring my hearing
Yeah,
aids
no,
here.
no one
Yeah,
online
I
will
was
be
gonna
able.
Jane, shouldn't you be sitting here in the stage one? I don't
So, well, really.
And Jane, I'm sorry, could you state your name?
Jane Payne. Jane Walker. The historical aspect of Jamestown is very important. And a lot of what this development is, alleges to be, is, I think it's trying to put some of the historic stuff in there, but it's just, to me, it's not working. Yeah, you know, and maybe when they get to you guys get to the types of buildings, how you want buildings, materials and everything, maybe that would help. The old house is there. We don't know what's going to happen to it. At this point, at least I'm not aware of, you know, anybody being able to fix it up and move it or whatever.
Jane, I just want to make sure, because we haven't opened it up to public comment yet, so I want to make sure that it, you know, we're not, you know, having a public comment section, but if you could speak to, I think maybe some of the issues we had talked about, you said you could address about
Well,
traffic and
traffic in
stuff.
particular, you know, if you look at Matthew Road now, of course, it's very narrow in, at Jordan Creek area. And we're between, you know, both sides of Mackey, that area. It's just very narrow. And it'll have to be widened. And it concerns me that some of those roads out from, or how the developer did that, were going to come out onto Mackey Road, but there's no indication, you know, what they would be turning it into, whether they could go right or left, and I was worried about Jordan Creek. And
I hate to interrupt you, but we can't go into public comment type of issues right now, so I guess.
well, that's
Well,
what I was
and
talking
also,
about.
I mean, we probably should have said it again for the record that Jane is, you know, the ETJ alternate to the planning board, so. Alternate to the planning board, so for those listening at home, she's not random.
So,
concerned citizen.
well, I'm not sure, you know, that was what I was concerned about.
Oh,
traffic.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you had some history there of Jamestown's issue with that functioning, but.
Well, I mean, I've done a lot of traffic stuff over the years because of railroads and, you know, stuff I've done through my work, but I'm not as familiar with Jamestown's traffic issues, although I do know that where you guys were talking about the civic area, I have a big concern with the traffic there.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay.
All right, so, let me turn that back. Okay, so left on the list.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you again,
Sure,
Jason.
no problem.
Before we go forward, let's get a check of people's stamina and see, do we have a time we want to go until, or is there any preference in terms of how long this goes? Do we go indefinitely? Do we?
9
9 o'clock?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock? What do others feel? 9 o'clock is good? 9?
Yeah.
9, okay. So we'll talk about an hour more.
Okay.
We won't cut out the conversation just to cut it off arbitrarily, but.
All right, so on our initial list, what we really, some of the things we really didn't talk about. Well, some, we talked about community impact, density, building materials, which I think is probably closely aligned with architectural styles and character, and then price point of the townhome. So from that list, does something jump out that you're really passionate about, would like to talk about right now? Community impact, density, or architectural design, those types of things.
To me, density is the number one thing I've heard my neighbors talk about, density and massing.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's a hot topic, density.
just talk about density.
Is that okay for everyone?
Well, those two, density and price point, are going to go together.
Yes, as well as community impact.
We want this magnificent development, so all the cost of everything that's in here goes into these townhomes, into these houses. So, and the lower density is going to drive the price up above too.
Right, right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I don't know if,
Well, we can't, we have to be careful. We can't talk about any kind of arbitrary price point that we
Right.
want.
I wasn't,
No, I'm sorry.
there's nothing wrong with putting quality in less density. Quality is all we're asking.
that's right.
Yeah.
A one-car garage townhome is not quality. It just isn't. It isn't even practical.
So I just always that reminder that we can't talk about arbitrary price points that we want to see. Not that you were, that's just a
I
reminder.
understand, I agree.
Can we talk about density without talking about sizes of them? For example, can we look at the numbers and try and figure out how to work with density?
I mean, we can talk about
Separate? I
size
mean, I
too.
don't
We just-
know.
We can't say we want this, we don't want a house under $300,000 in the neighborhood. We can't. do
No,
that.
no, I didn't mean that at
No,
all.
but I don't think it's wrong to ask, what is the price point? That's all. Not discussing it, but what is the price point for $1,400, 1,400 square foot home? I've had 4 people ask me that,
Yeah,
so I'm asking the question. You don't have to answer it. You don't have to answer it.
I understand.
That's the question
Right.
I bring from my constituents.
And I do appreciate that. We also just have to be in compliance with the federal law about housing discrimination,
I'm
so.
not trying to discriminate.
No, I
That's the
know,
question.
I know.
Well, I think I heard, what quality is a concern about the density in housing? What other type of issues under density are we concerned about?
Well,
School children.
Okay,
Well, that's community impact.
sure. It's kind of, some of these things we need together, sure.
Russ wants us to look at page 17 here.
it's Russ Walker. I'm talking about density and the look at things. The illustration on page 17 of a group of townhomes, connected,
Right.
that doesn't look like I would want it to look. That's,
You know what this looks like? It looks exactly like the one they're building up here on Main Street.
or
What's it
things
called?
behind.
The Magnolia?
They're building.
Oh,
By Mrs.
yeah,
Williams. By Mrs.
Magnolia on
Williams.
Main.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was thinking about the stuff on Ganaway.
yeah, it looks like that, yeah, and but those brand new ones, that it's like, this is that. Exactly.
I would hope that you wouldn't need to build more than 4 connected in any place, but,
Okay, so your specific concern about density, you're concerned about the number of units that are connected?
yeah,
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't like the look of what's on Ganaway, but, That may be what Zach's gonna have to do to get his numbers to work.
I think density is on page,
If that's what you're gonna see along in front of Jordan Creek and the new development in Bordeaux,
Yeah.
it's gonna look
Out of place.
unqualified.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, so I wrote concerned about the number of units connected and the overall look. Right? Yeah. I get it, okay. What other concerns?
Cara Arena and the lot sizes, I think
Okay.
speaks to the density.
The lot sizes.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find a place in the plan where it really says what the lot size is going to
page
be.
8.
There, yeah, just look at the picture. There's a picture.
Well, maybe not.
This tells you exactly.
Yeah, those are for the attached dwelling townhomes, and then for the single family homes also.
Like this,
Yeah,
yeah, 22 feet wide, 100 feet deep. Those are the lot sizes.
those are for the townhomes. I think page 18 has the lot sizes for the single family also. So, I don't know that we want to say a specific size. I don't know if we do.
Well, I know we had talked, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
We had talked at one point some about units per acre.
Mhm.
And I guess that would go into lot sizes.
Yeah,
So that's why it jumped to the top of my head and I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
no, that's great. Yeah, I think, they pointed out that overall the units per acre is like 3.25
Oh, yeah.
or something like that, but that includes all of the green space.
Yeah.
If you look at these pictures,
Do you know, does that, oh, I'm sorry, does it also include the other side of Guilford College?
I think it includes all of the green
The whole
space.
thing?
Mhm.
So it's a little misleading.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think if we look at these pictures on page 16 and 18, you can get a better sense of what the lots or the dwelling units per acre actually is. And I'm not saying that all of the single family residents need to be the same and all of the townhome areas need to be the same. There could be some variability there, I think, depending on maybe the neighborhoods. But I think we would like to see an increased number of dwelling units per acre. Or decrease, I don't know, wherever the, sorry,
Lower
so it's
density,
lower, yeah, lower
density,
density, so,
Okay.
I guess,
Okay.
yeah.
Is, Sherry Richmond, is it possible for us to look at an overall density number? For example, they were looking at 3.5, but that was counting all of the land. If we looked at 3.5 with just the land that can be developed, that would have to shift these numbers.
That would be,
And that would be maybe an easier formula to live with, 3.5 of the land that can be developed, and then shift that. It has to be shifted somehow, and then maybe the developer has an idea.
So you want to see some acreage numbers on what is proposed to be developed versus what is open space or?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
I think what I'm hearing is that you would like to see the actual land that's being proposed for development, what the density is for that.
Yes.
Correct.
Is that what I'm?
And now on page 8,
Maybe it's in there.
there's a residential summary, and it does have, each of the mixed-use townhomes and things, and then how many units per acre. And I believe that is for those specifically
yeah.
zoned areas. And those townhomes, you see 7 and 8 units per acre, and my understanding is with current ordinances, we have 6.
Hmm.
And
Oh,
for
okay.
single-family homes, we currently have 4. So that, if you're interested in
Yeah, oh, yeah, no,
How
thank you
that
for pointing that out.
matches.
Yeah, I think it should, I know that the PUD will have its own requirements, but I think it should match some of the existing zoning in our land development ordinance and other documents. So,
Yeah, I don't think we want anything to be less restrictive than what we already have in this ordinance.
Knowing the acres that are going to be developed would be good, but even if we had an agreement about overall, for example, a 3.3 per acres, which is probably not, probably it's a little small, but you've got 1 acre lots, Cedarwood, but you have townhomes. I don't know how many they take, but kind of a better idea, because at the bottom of this page, it's 466 gross acres, and then 1,500 units in that gross acreage. So I think that needs to be sorted out a little bit for us, you know, or an idea that everybody could come to a consensus about how many units per acre would reduce the density. I'm concerned about the schools too. You know, what kind of density do we want to look at?
So basically, that 466 gross acres, it goes back to that original question, which I don't think is played out here, but number of acres being developed versus what's being proposed undeveloped, and looking at the density of the proposed developed acres, not the gross.
Right.
You want to know that.
Since we're on page 8, I just want to point out, they have a wonderful buffer around this neighborhood in the picture.
Yeah, they do.
Yes.
Yeah, if you look at the used acreage and the 1,517 units, it comes out to just about 5 per acre overall. It's a little bit less, like 4.3 or something. I'm around it.
And I think we talked about this at some point. Whittington Hall, that's about 4 per acre. Is that? I was just trying to get a visualization.
Whittington Hall should be the standard. It's the latest,
Latest and greatest.
yeah.
All right, so how does it compare?
Yeah, but that's all single family housing in there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all single family.
All single home, but it would still blend in with townhomes. If the townhomes are something other than,
7 or 8.
I don't know, I can't describe it. Sorry. When I look on that page 17, that's just an apartment building with a garage. And that's going to be lining Mackey Road. It's going to be opposite of what's on the other side of the street. So to me, that's not fair. That's not good judgment.
Just as a comment, that's why I go back to the buffering. You can do anything if you got the proper buffering.
Well, I think it does though get back into the impact on schools.
That's
Too.
different, yeah,
So-
that I agree with.
Well, reducing the density may also, maybe in some way we could say that we only want, I don't know how I can connect them right now, but have three units together and not that long thing. We might be able to say you can only have 3 and then a walkway or open space, you know, and break some of that up and then talk about building materials later. But if we're just under density, this has to be reduced. Our schools are going to suffer.
What's on Ganaway Street for the townhomes? How many units in a row? Is that whole length of Ganaway?
I
is
feel like they're all
attached?
connected.
And we get complaints about that every day.
That's the post office.
Yeah, next to the post office.
Where it's located, except for the one across.
The ones across the street are great.
Yeah,
Well, they're connected too.
I mean,
Yeah.
But they're 3.
it dropped the value of it too. when those across the street were built. So,
In Jordan Creek, we've got a mix of two connected with a shared wall. We've got several that are just independent. They don't, not connected to any, so they're single. And then the most we have is three. So you've got two on the end and one in the middle. And we got, so maybe two of those.
if you'll go back to the photographs, that I furnished, starting with 1 through 15 or 16. Where are they? Here they are. You'll see the selection of townhomes or patio homes, or however we want to
I
describe
didn't mean to
them.
confuse it, Eddie. I was trying to make sure I was visualizing the right thing about it.
But if you look at these are all in a tight-knit community on top of one another. Nothing wrong with them at all. It's how they're designed and laid out, the material they use, and the way they put them in to have the best possible traffic and parking, and it's hard to beat. And you got Sedgefield Villas, you got Jordan's Creek, and you got
Bordeaux,
excuse me,
Bordeaux.
no, Bordeaux, I didn't take pictures of Bordeaux. The other one is just right up above the, oh goodness, Jamestown Presbyterian Church.
Okay.
They're on both sides of the
Stone
road.
Gables.
Stone Gables, thank you, thank you. Those are the three best projects in close proximity of Jamestown. Can't find anything nicer.
So,
And I visioned this for Castleton. I don't know why it can't be that, because they'll settle.
so it sounds like what you're saying, you're not so concerned about density. It's the quality of what's.
Quality
of
of the density.
Gotcha. Okay. Got it.
I think we should still reduce density because of the schools. That's still got to be a real heavy hitter right here for us to deal with. And then, because there'll be, if we reduce density, there'll be more space, maybe to have something a little bit nicer, even if it's, maybe more open space between some of these units.
But there's also the town services that we have to consider. So I know that schools aren't technically something we can control, but, if we are, having to provide services to this dense of a place, or if we can decrease the density, maybe that would lessen the impact on existing Jamestown residents who enjoy those services.
Yeah, I need to dig a little bit deeper still. But I've had conversations about the sewer, clean and wastewater system, and the wastewater system. Again, I have to dig deeper, but my understanding right now with this development would be pretty much maxed out. So I don't know what that would mean for any future development, if we'd have no capacity for it or not, but that's something certainly we would need to consider, I think, because that's something we do have control over, is wastewater, so. I mean, it could be done, my understanding is it could be done, but it would max out our capacity, so.
Well, how can we reduce density? What kind of suggestion can we give? Should we say reduce it down to 3 per acre? I mean, or do we have a formula in mind that they could work with? You know,
Well,
we've got to think of some way to cut this down if we're talking about density. To cut the number of units down, whether that's single family or whether it's townhome. So we have fewer children if we're
I
talking
mean, we
about
already have
school.
ordinances in place.
Right, there is a guide and, you know, we can obviously do anything. I don't know that it would be fair to go below what we currently allow. But I also kind of wonder if, you know, that this majority of the townhomes proposed at 8 units an acre, if that was sort of with the anticipation that we might not want 8 since we currently have 6. And so maybe they were hoping we could settle in between. So, you know, it's just, it's up for discussion. I would think it would be unfair to say you can only have 3 townhomes per acre if we currently would allow something else.
but it is a fair question to say, we're coming up with this formula to compute these. Does including the land that's on the opposite side of the development, it's not very developable anyhow because of the power lines and then landlocked to get to it. Is it fair to throw that into the formula to get to 3.25? Or should that be something separate? At least stay on the same side of the street as far as your formula goes. And that would reduce some density simply by doing that.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to get that number, find out what that number is.
But it depends on what you put in your formula.
Yeah.
But I would say we, you know, at a minimum, or maybe at least we just look at the current standards for like single family resident zoning and I think it's or what is it? Attached dwelling or townhome zoning requirements.
Is the primary concern about density, is the primary concern school age children?
I think that goes
Some of
together.
The part of it, okay. Certainly, you know, you can look at, you know, age, you know, like the age targeted housing, you know, certainly will have an impact on the number of school children. You know, if there's restrictions that could be, you know, suggested on age for some of the housing, you know, certainly that's something that could be considered. And that would reduce the impact on schools anyway.
People have talked about traffic too, though, and potentially dropping down current trash pickup to once a week instead of 2 to accommodate larger. So, well, just, you know, which a lot of people say, give us cans and we don't care. But, you know, I think it impacts, even if you don't have kids and maybe you say, who cares if the school's overcrowded? You know, the traffic is an issue or there could be some other things. So I think, you know, what I've heard enough variety of things that it really is density across the board. It's not just too many of certain age.
It might also help with parking if the density is reduced.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you're gonna go, I don't really think it's our place to tell the developer what kind of housing. I think it's our place to say we want less housing. That would be our thought when you go back to your plan. We would like to see less density.
I think that's where I keep going,
'Cause
back to,
I'm not-
rather than this and this and this, you know, go back to a formula. We want how many acres can be developed and can we reduce that density? And that will take care of some of these issues.
Yeah, and, you know, keep in mind, you know, some of the buffering questions we had could affect this overall density too. There's a couple of things working here. So I think if we come back, it sounds like you want some more information on, you know, actual density minus some of these ancillary parcels. Sounds like that's something you want some information on, which should be able to figure that out pretty quickly. And then also buffering is going to impact the footprint of the overall project as well. Okay. Anything else about density?
the comment that Sarah made about the sewage and stuff, that it would be maxed out after this is done.
Yeah, please don't take my, that's not like,
Yeah.
Okay.
that's not an official word or anything.
So,
I said I need more information
Question.
about that.
what does this
Okay.
do to the wastewater?
Okay, yeah.
We'll find out. We put treatment capacity, I think is what we're talking about.
That might be good to know, because there are other parcels in Jamestown, and, you know, we want to leave room for other people to develop too.
If you look at your presentation, something that you mentioned that we might want to talk about is the proportional mixture of single family versus townhomes.
Okay.
So that could be something that we look at also.
And that's a density issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally unrelated, but something to circle back around to at some point is, and not tonight, but as Rebecca was saying, if it is true that, say, we have this development and then we have a reduction in services for people who already live here, like less trash pickup and such. And maybe that's not something people are concerned, maybe they're fine with that, but it would be a reduction in services for people who currently live here. I think it's worthy of a discussion to say, well, I thought we were generating all this tax revenue from this property, so why would services have to be reduced? And is that a trade-off we want? Do the citizens who currently live here, is it fair to them to have them reduce services to accommodate a new development? Again, not right now, but someday.
That would go back to density, wouldn't it?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the discussions have been around that, but if there are discussions that a new development would mean reduction in services for other people, then I think that's something worth talking about.
I don't really see why that has to be.
No, me,
Okay. What other density related topics?
anything else about density?
You guys are impressive. I don't know if you keep thinking and moving like this. All right. So we've covered density. I guess all on this particular list we have left would be community impact, which we talked a little bit about. And then the architectural building materials character question, which we talked a little bit about online. So your pick. Which one of those you want to tackle now?
The community impact.
Community,
Yeah.
Community impact?
you want to talk about community impact?
And I agree with Sarah's comment earlier. She mentioned she'd like to have the traffic people or consultant or whoever it was,
Yeah.
come back and give us the layman's view of what he has written. I mean, I've read most of that. I can't say I've read every page because
I tried to.
I can honestly say I couldn't get through it all. It's extremely detailed. And, I think he had in there a couple of those entrances would be right-hand turn in and out only. And that would make sense because you don't want to really restrict too much the flow of the traffic that's on Guilford College now or Mackey. So right-hand turn in and out would lessen that because you wouldn't have any cross traffic. You already have a light at Guilford College, so that gives them one entrance with a light. You could probably put another entrance that has allows a left-hand turn, maybe down where that ball field would be down there, because that's allows access through the intersection now, and you might put one over at Mackey to do the same thing. But don't do them all that way, because that just creates a traffic hazard and a hassle for through traffic, and I'll be through traffic most of the time, so that would be my comment on that. And that to me is the community impact, because that impacts everybody that drives past the place.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
All right. That's a lot. What else?
This is gonna have a big, once it's done, a big impact on the fire protection.
Okay.
Especially with that pipeline.
Well, I understand that.
Which you didn't even know was
We're
there.
gonna have some more fire engines, I'm sure, and maybe another station.
Where is the closest station to us?
And Matthew, I don't know the answer to this. Has that question been
It's on Matthew.
proposed to the?
Pine Cross Sedgwick, yeah.
Has the question been proposed to the fire department yet about potential impacts of this development?
They have, and they're, I think it's something you can hear me. They do have some concerns about their current facility, and they are looking at possibilities of trying to relocate, to make sure that they can continue to serve Jamestown in the capacity that they have. That remains to be seen exactly where that will shake out.
Is that Sedgefield?
Pine Cross, Sedgefield.
Sedgefield, okay.
So they're working on information to provide back in a memo or email or some kind of report or?
We will bring something to you at a little bit later date when we get some better details.
They'd also be serviced by the station on Matthew, wouldn't they?
So of course, they're gonna take all of that into consideration.
Okay.
But there are some concerns about their current facility here not being adequate size-wise.
Oh, okay.
And its location in sort of a blind corner. So
Yeah,
they have
yeah.
been looking at options closer to this particular development, because this is a good time for them to consider that.
Okay, well, it's good to keep that on. What else?
Well, we had the school folks come our last meeting.
Okay.
And so I think we need to at some point have a serious discussion about one of the suggestions was, the donation of land and whether we want that to be, part of our consideration of this project. There was a lot of things that schools suggested, some more doable than others probably. So that seemed like the most concrete of the suggestions they had, so.
So the schools actually suggested,
The school system suggested the
Land.
donation of land to build a new school on eventually.
okay,
Because it might increase the probability of the school actually being built
Yeah,
earlier.
did they provide any information on the type of school?
they were talking about an elementary school.
Okay,
They needed 40 acres for, I think it was a K through 5 school, I think.
okay.
They'll need to house at least 900 students. 900 plus students.
That can be a huge issue because we're here tonight, but we have children coming along or children who will be in this development. And I don't want them all in trailers. They can't even, I don't know if they can fit any more trailers at some of these places. And the Guilford County projection was 10 to 15 years before they could build a new school. And Millis Road is 150% capacity right now. So that's why I keep getting back to density, because I was a teacher and I had 34 seniors in one class. So I kind of know what it's like when you have too many kids in one room. And we want to look out for our next generation. That's what we're here for, to look to the future. And this has to be built in. How are we going to accommodate with density and maybe a donation of some land? That the school board member said that it would be probably helpful if the land were donated, because then it might move up the list, because it could maybe easier way to get more money to build the school if they didn't have to buy the land. That was the suggestion that they had.
There's a lot under that potential. Did they say how many acres they would need?
40.
Said 40.
40?
I think somewhere I read 30 to 40. I think 40 was what they ended up saying. Okay.
That's a good question. We'll find out some more. Okay.
You could put the sheriff's office with fire protection, just sort of the services that we contract for. And then also trash and recycling.
Would Castleton Village be getting trash collection from the town of Jamestown? We don't get it in Jordan Creek.
If
We have
it's,
to,
if it's annexed, it would be Jamestown. I mean, that's
Do you pay
that's,
Jamestown taxes in Jordan Creek?
yes, sir.
You do?
Sure do.
Good for you.
Dwayne was probably did us a favor, otherwise we'd be paying Greensboro.
That's right. It's an either or.
well, that's a good question.
So does Greensboro do your trash then?
No, we have to hire, we've got
Really?
Republic, we're switching to somebody else, Republic or whatever it was. So I guess that's the homeowners association has to.
Yeah.
I'll be the bad guy here and talk about a positive community impact that a lot of people think is a negative in terms of the commercial space. And just that, I think, is a positive for this development. There's a question of why, do we even need commercial space in this development? And part of it goes to the PUD and the different mixed-use spaces, but it goes back to, there's already a 2-hour wait at our favorite restaurants in Jamestown, or they run out of food. So I don't know, not something we need to maybe just highlight for the people at home. The reason why there's a commercial space in this development is because if we're going to increase the density of our town, which we are, we need some additional places and spaces for these community members and all of the community members in Jamestown to enjoy.
I agree with you, Carol. I talked with not a developer, an engineer, and he said you just can't make a development this size and not provide some commercial development to service the needs of it. So it'll just spill over and overwhelm everywhere around. So if we want to keep, to quote some people, keep Jamestown, then we need for this area to be able to service itself to a certain extent.
Can I ask a question, let's say a dumb question? Well, I guess there aren't any dumb questions. The area that's up there near Publix, that was, I thought, supposed to be developed into some commercial areas up there as well. Restaurants and stuff like that. This development is certainly close enough to that. Would that not alleviate some of the issue you had about overcapacity in Jamestown? But also, I mean, you have that already with all those apartments that are going up there. Where are all those people gonna go? So does anyone know what's supposed to be developed in there?
No.
You do? Okay, what?
No, I just know that there's a Chick-fil-A coming up there. And it will be long lines also. Now, I hope that if they're building all those apartments, they've got planned the service system.
The apartments are
Condos, I guess. They look like apartments.
They look like apartments, but they're kind of, well, again, there's a lot of people that be going in there.
Eventually build condos.
Okay, but right now, what they're building are apartments.
But I think what's in that commercial space may or may not be different than what we're envisioning or what we might envision in this commercial space, right? We're talking about ice cream shops and like another Southern Roots type of restaurant compared to a Chick-fil-A.
I agree.
That's nasty.
That gets into another whole evening probably, is discussing what kinds of things we would prefer or not prefer, or even if that's what we can do, I don't know, for the commercial space. In other words, I think one thing we could say is no drive-throughs, for example, and that would be for everything. The thing about drive-through is I know it's very convenient. I use them, right here all the time, but drive-throughs create a lot of pollution because the cars are slow or stopped. And there's a lot of pollution that comes out of the back of the car to the people in the car behind it. There are a lot of studies being done on pollution effects on the body just from being in traffic like that. So that's an interesting thing to think about when you talk about drive-throughs.
I don't think they're proposing any drive-throughs for this.
But it might be good to put that, because as Eddie said, this would go for the future too. So if something goes,
Maybe by then, everybody will be in an electric car.
If you limit drive-throughs, does that preclude like a pharmacy? Or
No,
something
we
like that?
have a limit in Jamestown.
Say again?
I know, is it just in the historic section on no drive-through restaurants?
For,
In Jamestown that we currently, I should know this.
sorry,
No, no, no.
allow drive-throughs in the town limits of Jamestown.
for
Restaurant
restaurants, it depends on the zoning district.
Okay,
So in the Main Street zoning district downtown,
right,
there are not permitted use.
right. So I mean, we could, again, like look at
Yeah.
current ordinances and decide to mimic what we have for our own
Yep.
Yeah.
downtown.
Yeah. Now, Matthew, though, because I feel like this has come up before on other things, maybe when there was not casino, remember what the online
Sweepstakes?
They used to have, what was, sweepstakes, thank you. So, I think it came up before that you can like dictate businesses, like if they're in a certain distance from like a school or a library or something like that, but you can't, otherwise you can't say what businesses can go in as long as they meet, like if they don't have a drive-through, so a business without a drive-through.
So this is a planned use development, and as part of that, you're creating a whole new zoning district.
Oh, okay, so you can do whatever,
create
okay.
types of uses.
Oh, okay,
See if
awesome.
you don't want to.
I thought there was just like something illegal about dictating what kinds of businesses went in. But no, right?
That's the advantage for
Yeah.
planning and development.
All right. Other community impacts, gotta be some.
Well, you put it on a different one, but I want to find out more about that wastewater. And
Yes, that's on the other one,
Yeah.
but, we can put.
impact future,
Yeah, we can put it up
future
here too.
development.
Put utilities, yes.
Have I heard that the greenway might be like extended and connected somewhere around
I
this
feel like I heard that
property?
too, at some point.
Okay, so that could be a question, maybe. The greenway,
Greenway extension?
yeah. Is that meeting up here?
Do we have, I'm sorry, going back to the utilities, do we have, I guess it wouldn't be allowed even on Mackey. I'm thinking, you know how in High Point, up on Penny Road, they put those monstrosity electric poles up? You know, they're like huge silver towers. We wouldn't be able to have any of those, would we, with the utilities?
You do, you have the ability to craft this as you
Okay.
would like to see it.
Okay.
The catch is that the developer has to agree to the things that you're asking.
Right, oh, yeah.
Which, you know.
Well, I don't think
this.
this would even be the developer, I think it's more the utility company of.
Right, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is High Point's utility, High Point's the electric utility
In High Point or,
in High Point.
so, but they wouldn't be able to come in and put those giant monstrosities here.
So there's
Or
already.
those cell phone towers that are, you know.
Duke power line easement that's
Yeah.
carrying, I think it's 720 volt kilovolts.
Yeah.
The power capacity is, I can't remember, large towers, you won't need that in a subdivision. So,
Okay, yeah, I'm not talking about like what runs behind Whittington Hall. I'm
I
talking
don't know
about
what their intentions are, but, you know, typically, one would see, you know, either electrical utilities being installed in the ground. Not always, but it's common.
Typically.
Well, yeah, I would hope so. I just didn't want like in the back of the neighborhood to be those giant electric poles, I guess they are, and then giant cell towers and all this kind of thing, so.
Is underground utilities a issue, concern?
I mean,
Sure.
It's
Yes, it
I
is.
thought that was a given.
Yeah, I thought it
Well, I
was
mean,
going to, but.
Is it a given?
Yeah.
They're right there. All right. Other community impacts?
I have one that's not related to anything here. But Kara brought part of the idea up a little bit, and that is that if we have all of this development, we do need some commercial. And I've heard that some people say, well, if you have commercial there, is it going to take away from commercial in Jamestown? And I know a lot of people in Jamestown are concerned that you're going to have two Jamestowns, you know, one over here, Castleton, and one downtown Jamestown. I understand that's a real concern, but at the same time, maybe we need to figure out a way to communicate to the public that this would be an asset, or figure out a way to communicate that some of this can work for Jamestown. And that's what we're here for anyway, because we want to make it work for Jamestown. But communication seems to be a little bit of a problem. I don't know if people are not reading the newspaper. You know, I get calls and I have to start back, I don't know, January or something, and move forward for an hour on the phone. But community impact, I don't know how we can improve communication. Maybe we're responsible for trying to communicate with people too, but we don't have a television station in Jamestown. You know, the newspaper is the only thing that gives the residents any information on what goes on in Jamestown. And this is not related to the developer, but it is in a way to let people know what's going on and that some of this can be good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know that, you know, it's something that could be, you know, considered a little bit further by the board, is to look at, you know, this project may or may not move ahead, we don't know, but, you know, how, if it were to move ahead, you know, maybe requiring some kind of direct communication to the, a lot of times for downtown projects where you're going to have, you know, someone come in and tear up a street, you know, town would require that developer of this big project to have this communication relation, public relations campaign with people around the, you know, the project. Something similar to that could potentially help if this project were approved. Obviously, if it's not approved, it doesn't matter. but I think that could be something to help if this project moves forward, some kind of public relations communication type requirement that might be part of this. As far as communications now about this process, I think the town's probably following all the protocols. You know, all these information meetings are being broadcast, you know, minutes. There's a lot of information out there, and you know, just somebody that's concerned about it, following it. It's tough to keep up with all these things, and you know, you hear things from neighbors, and you know, you might just read one excerpt from a news heading, and you don't know the whole story. And it's hard, and it's hard to. Where do you start at? How do you catch somebody up, or how do you explain things? And it's really difficult at best.
If these are things that we all kind of are concerned about, and if the developer agrees to the majority of these things, then maybe something else sent out to the neighbors of what the new design is going to look like, because it would be beneficial to integrate Castleton with Jamestown, and people are the ones who integrate. You know, they're the ones who make the feelings better and understandings better. That's a possibility.
Let's put communications on here, keep that at the forefront as this process moves ahead. Communications.
And I think we have to realize, though, that no matter what we decide to do, there's going to be a group of people that are going to be upset. There is a mindset that wants nothing to be done with any undeveloped land in Jamestown. And it's fair that a family that has land and inherits it can develop it in a responsible manner. And we're here to decide what that responsible manner should look like, at least give our recommendation. And then the authority above us will yea or nay, or improve it. But because of the no growth, no development policy that some people have, that there's no way we're going to make them happy. We just have to do something that we feel good in our heart about, and we keep Jamestown in the limelight.
All right, any other discussion? I think we're getting close to 9.
Yes,
I hate to
so,
start another topic.
no, let's not start another topic.
Okay.
Because I think the architecture one I think that was one of the last things on the list. I think that's gonna be a big conversation probably, so. So we will try to wrap this up. Okay, so next meeting,
Let's continue this without voting.
oh, yes, so yes,
They need to decide the time and date.
yeah, well, that's what I want,
Do that.
yeah, that's what I want to decide that, and then we can make the motion to do that. So I know there was discussion about like an all-day work session or whatnot. So I don't know if people have thoughts or a proposal.
I'm opposed.
We've done a lot tonight. Why can't we continue with the
That's fine too, we could
evenings?
just do that. and we
We've
could
done a
just
lot in one evening.
Continue in 2 weeks. What do you all think?
Do we make a motion?
Yeah, well, I want to get people's
Well, now,
thoughts on it.
the thought for the all day, I assume is because if we take a big subject in small bites, it's gonna take a mighty long time to get to some place, and all ours is a recommendation to you guys, so we hate to artificially draw it out too long, but I mean, no, in my age, 9 to 6 is not an easy, and I can't even watch television that long. So I'm not saying yay or nay, but.
Well, and I like having time between our meetings to process what we've talked about,
Right.
go for a walk or a drive and try and envision some of the things that we've
That's a
talked
good
about,
point.
and talk to my neighbors. So
Good point.
I appreciate having some time in between meetings.
Katie, when's our next regularly scheduled meeting?
Well,
In October, let's see here. 12.
if you continue on this 2-week schedule, it will be September 28th.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to see when our regular time is, so we could see if we want to do a 2-week interval.
Do we have something else the 28th? No?
No, I have to order apples that day. That's what's in my calendar. Oh, is it?
That's what mine said.
Well, let's do another 3-hour meeting then, rather than an all day.
Okay, so do we want, are we thinking the Monday, the 28th at 6 o'clock again here? Okay, so we need, is that working for everyone? I see most of them nod. Does that work, Eddie, for you? Russ? Okay. Richard, is okay for you? Okay, so we need a motion to continue the public hearing to September 28th at 6 p.m. here in the Civic Center without further advertisement.
So moved.
Thank you, Russ. Is anyone second?
Second.
Hang on, before you vote, when do they start early voting here?
October 15th.
Okay, 'cause I don't want to make sure we don't.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay. So all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Okay, we are adjourned for tonight.
We still need a motion
What?
to adjourn.
You need a
Oh, we
motion
need a
to
motion to adjourn. Oh.
And we have a public comment period.
Oh, that's right. Oh, shoot. Okay, we're not adjourned. I take back my gavel.
We didn't even have a motion.
Yeah, all the motions. Okay, so first, do we have anyone signed up for public hearing or comment? Okay, now we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Anyone second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. All right, now we're adjourned.